few housekeeping notes to make before we begin today's program. First, I would like to seek your cooperation in completing this afternoon's conference. Kindly switch your mobile phones to silent mode to avoid unnecessary interruptions. Thank you for your kind cooperation and attention. Assalamualaikum. The peace be upon you all and a very good afternoon to our dear speakers, guests, colleagues, and students. I am Anderson Villa. Many of my friends call me Andy. And on behalf of the Center for Political and International Affairs, or CPIA, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. We appreciate you taking time off your busy schedules to join us today. As the theme of this afternoon's forum, Mindanao in Search for Federal Alternatives, is of great significance to all of us Mindanaoans and for the Filipino nation as a whole. We hope you will learn a lot today and perhaps help take actions for a better Mindanao and progressive Philippines. Okay. May I request all of you to stand for the invocation and the national anthem. Please remain standing for the national anthem under the prayer.
Mga igsuon, atong ibutang ang atong kaugalingon sa presensya sa atong Ginoo. Sa ngalan sa Amahan, sa Anak, o sa Espiritu Santo. Amen. O Diyos namong Amahan, nagapasalamat kami kanimo sa tanang grasya nga among naangkon gikan kanimo. Salamat sa maayong adlaw ug sa higayon sa among panagtapok karon. Hinaut unta nga kaning Federalism Forum mahimong mabungahon ug maghatag kanamo og tamang pagsabot sa kalinawan sa pagunahuna mahitungod niini. Ug unta, tungod niini, mihimo kaming maayong magbalantay sa imong mga binuhat. Pasaylua kami Ginoo sa mga kalapasan nga among nahimo. Tabangi kami Ginoo sa pagbago alang sa kaayuhan sa among kaugalingon aron kami makatabang usab sa uban. Himua kami instrumento sa kabag-uhan para sa kaayuhan sa tibuok nasod sa Pilipinas. Ginoo, hinaot nga padayon mo kami giyahan, tabangi kami sa mga kalisdanan ug ipadala mo kamo ang imong balang espiritu arong maprotekta kanamo. Kining tanan among giampo ug gipangayo sa ngalan ni Hesus Kristo. Amen. Sa ngalan sa Amahan, sa Anak, sa Espiritu Santo. Amen.
To begin this program, we are pleased to have here Mr. Neil Ryan Pancho, the CPIA Director, to deliver the opening remarks. Sir Neil.
Guests, friends, and companions, mayong hapon sa tanan. There has been a lot of talks about federalism. But what is really the alternative that we are chasing? In short, what is the type of federalism that we are trying to create for Mindanao and the rest of the country? BUSA, the Center for Politics and International Affairs, CPIA, and the University Community Engagement and Advocacy Council decided to create a platform of conversation for us in Davao and for us Mindanaoan to share opinions and ideas. There are many things to talk about federalism. Kumbaga sa Cebuano, kinsa pa man di ay ang magkasinabtanay, kita ramang mga silingan sa lapad nga isla sa Mindanao. Building on this platform, CPIA intend to collect ideas and positions for our policymakers to consider. If this alternative will embrace this like long-lost brother or a companion, then we go back to what Joe Ayala said, anhi mo diri sa Mindanao para magpugas og kalinaw. Mabuhay ang Mindanao, ipadayon ang kalinaw.
Thank you, Sir Neil, for the very inspiring message and for sharing your words of wisdom with us. Now, before we carry on to the conversation proper, let us all recognize the following attendees and participants for today's conference. From the communities we have here, Barangay 40D. A round of applause. Help me read here. Help me hear it. Now we have Barangay Dumoy. Representative from Barangay Dumoy, Barangay 2A, Barangay Balyo, IPS, IPMR member, please be recognized. Barangay Centro. Thank you, ma'am. Barangay Bato. Barangay 36D. Now, for the NGOs, we have here IDs or EDs. Lihok Federal. Peace Network. Thank you, ma'am. San Lorenzo Foundation. Lumad, Mindanao. From Women, CDPI, MNLF, KPP, MILF, Unitarian, IPHC, Federalia Association Movement Worldwide Incorporated. SOC Sergeant, ma'am, no? Sir. And of course, from our schools, we have Ateneo de Davao University Law School, grade school, high school, and of course, from the college community. At this juncture, may I call on the chair of the University Research Council, Ms. Lordisita Chan, to help us introduce the lead discussants and the panelists and to moderate the conversation proper. Ma'am Bing.
Thank you, Dr. Villa. Good afternoon to all. And once again, welcome to the university and to this very important conversation. Before I introduce the resource person and the members of the panel, may I orient you to the mechanics of the pakighinabi, or what we call in the university the conversation. Notice in our physical arrangement that we have two layers here. We have the inner circle and the bigger circle. So the pakighinabi is meant to facilitate a conversation, an exchange of ideas on a topic of burning concern to all of us in the university and to the bigger community. This afternoon, we have chosen federalism, particularly Mindanao, in the search for federal alternatives. To facilitate the exchanges, we invited a lead discussant that we will introduce in a while, and the lead discussant is given about 15 to 20 minutes to share or to elaborate on the subject of discussion. After which, the invited panel in the inner circle will be given about 2 to 5 minutes to share their ideas on the subject of discussion. I was told by the organizers that we have a digital watch that will remind us of the time. And just in case, I hope you give me the indulgence to remind you that it is your time. Okay? We try to traffic the discussion so we can approximate or optimize the opportunity for exchanges. After the inner circle discussants have given each their own piece on the subject, they will be privileged the opportunity to interact with each other and with the lead discussant. This will be for about 45 minutes. Sila-sila muna. While those who are listening in the outer circle, you are encouraged to write down your thoughts and your ideas, because after 45 minutes of their exchanges, then we will accommodate questions and reactions from outside the inner circle. Is that clear to all? Okay. So thank you. Our lead discussant is no stranger to the university. He has been our frequently invited resource person, no? I think the professor also enjoys coming over. I hope so. So Professor Go is a professor, assistant professor of the Department of Political Science at the University of the Philippines in Diliman, Quezon City. He holds a Master of Arts in Political Science and also a Master of Arts in a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from the University of the Philippines. He is currently a researcher, and his field of interest, such as the ongoing research that he is doing now, is on health gains and re-election, an analysis of the influence of local health improvements on the 2013 local election results in the Zwillig Family Foundation select partner municipalities. He is also currently engaged in a research on poverty alleviation in the wake of Typhoon Yolanda. Likewise, his previous research interest includes money politics, patronage, clientelism, and electoral dynamics in the Philippines, as well as a host of other similarly related research interests. Currently, Professor Go is the managing editor of the Philippine Political Science Journal, the official journal of the Political Science Association of the country. He is likewise the project assistant or acting secretary, Emergency and Humanitarian Action of the World Health Organization Regional Office for the Western Pacific at the United Nations Avenue, Ermita, Manila. Professor Go is a published professor. He has published an article on political leadership and education politics, the mayor and education services in Nasugbu, Batangas. Likewise, he has published also a chapter in a book entitled Assessing the Tuwid na Daan, focus on the 5 key result areas, And this chapter title is Poverty Reduction and Empowerment of the Poor and the Vulnerable. He has likewise published a book review on the Chinese question, ethnicity, nation and region in and beyond the Philippines. So he has a very thick resume that was shared with us, but I think what is very critical here is we have a very competent lead discussant in the person of Assistant Professor Jan Robert Ramos Go, with a field of interest in political science, as well as this is bolstered by his research interest. So, friends, ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Professor Go. Of equally important set of panel that will discuss with us the very important issue on Mindanao federal are a host competent on this topic, not only because they know, but because they operate in the various vital sector of Mindanao. It is my great pleasure and honor, the great Cesar Ledesma of the Lihok Federal in Mindanao. Please acknowledge. We have Mr. Cesar Ledesma. Then we have Mr. Lito Monico C. Lorenzana of CDPI. Please, yes, sir. Then we have Timoy Jimid Mansayagan from Lumad, Mindanao. We have Attorney Randolph Parcasio representing the Moro National Liberation Front, KPP. And we have Attorney Nagib Sinarimbo of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. I think peace has come. Who would ever expect the three will be seated together? Okay? Then we have the representative of the women groups, Attorney Cecilia Jimenez. So welcome and good afternoon to all of our resource persons. Professor Go, your time starts now.
Okay, thank you very much and good afternoon everyone. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share my insights on federalism. The interest on federalism has become, the recent interest is unprecedented. Since our president has expressed his willingness and interest to move for a shift to a federal form of government from the present unitary form. I'm given the task to provide an overview of federalism and some of the possible challenges, perhaps. So, when we introduce federalism, we always ask the question, what is federalism? And I think it is important for us to also know that if we are talking about federalism, we are simply talking about sharing of power. And in these terms, I would like to look at it in terms of shared sovereignty and shared powers. Shared sovereignty in the sense that in a federal form of government, there is a federal government or the national government and state governments who would share powers depending on the design that they will agree into. There would be occasions when the national government or the federal government would have exclusive powers. There would also be instances that they will have shared powers, and at the state level there might be reserved powers. But the point is, federalism is simply telling us that there will be sharing of powers. And I think this is critical because in a unitary form of government, all power and authority emanates from the center. And any power that would be taken by local government units would be simply an extension of the authority coming from the center. That's why in our present setup, we look at local governments as subordinate units. But in a federal form of government, we will see them as not necessarily co-equal, but a two-tiered system, and both have their respective sets of powers. But beyond asking the question of what is federalism, I think it is more important to ask why federalize, or why adopt a federal form of government. This is essential because it's as if we have assumed that we will be shifting to a federal form of government. We have first to resolve the question of why are we moving towards a federal form of government. There is a presupposition that the current form has problems. And as we have earlier discussed this morning, it is important for us to know what these problems are and identify how federalism would be able to respond to these problems. Earlier, we also mentioned that there is an assumption that with a federal form of government, many of the problems besetting our country will be solved. Whether it is Manila imperialism, the peace in Mindanao, or even as simple, perhaps, as traffic. So we think that federalism can resolve these issues. So the question is why we are doing this. For the longest time, however, the Philippines has been decentralized. Even before the 1991 Local Government Code, there has already been decentralization. And under the present Constitution, it explicitly provides for a decentralized framework. Many of the functions of the national government have already been devolved to local levels, and we have a very rich experience in terms of this devolution and decentralization of various public service sectors in the country, such as health, education, tourism, agriculture, environment, even public works. So, given these experiences that we've had before, it should be incumbent upon us to look back and review the 25 years of decentralization and devolution, and how these experiences will feed into a situation where the Philippines has federalized. Will we be able to cope up with the demands of a federal setup? At present, the Duterte administration has been active in expressing its desire to move to a federal form of government. If I'm not mistaken, they will start talking about it January next year. Bills have already been pending in Congress on the form of amending the Constitution. So aside from the question of why, it is also important for us to ask how. How do we federalize? How do we change the Constitution? And there are two options at least: the Constitutional Convention and the Constituent Assembly. Of course, there is the People's Initiative, but we have tried that before, and that would be a very tedious process because there's need for verification of all the signatures. So it is a question of how do we change our Constitution as well? Do we change it through Constituent Assembly, where we will be transforming our Congress into an assembly of men and women who will change the charter? Or do we select a constitutional convention wherein we elect representatives who will represent the sentiments of the people as they craft the Constitution. At the same time, there is another how question in my mind. How do we structure, how do we organize ourselves as a federal form of government? This is, again, under the assumption that we are indeed pursuing a federal form of government. It is important for us to look at the context. If we're going to look at other federations or federal forms of government, they become, in terms of context, they become federal because they come together or they were born together. Like in the case of the United States of America. There were initially 13 states. They cannot live on their own. They decided to be a federation. And therefore, the federation is out of need. The federation was born from the start. There are instances when they need to hold together because there are attempts from other factions or other sections of the state to secede. And therefore, in order to hold together the territory, they decide to federalize. This is federalism by devolution, by giving more powers to some areas, as in the case of Spain. Finally, in terms of context, there are forced federations, wherein they just decided to become federal states. And this is going to be problematic in the process because if it is forced, then there is no natural evolving need for them to adopt the system. In terms of structure, we have to, because as I said earlier, the federalism is about sharing of powers. And we can look at it in terms of cooperative, competitive, and permissive structures. The competitive structure is a federal form where few shared roles are provided. That means that between the federal and the state governments, there are only few roles that they share. Competitive. In the same way, states compete with other states. Unlike in a cooperative structure, it is more focused on shared roles. The national and the federal and the state governments are cooperative. They focus on their shared roles and build up on those shared roles as they perform their function. The permissive structure is where, well, it still seems like unitary because in this case, the central government still determine what the state roles would be. So you see, in terms of structure, we can look at it at how much, which are we focusing on? Are we focusing on the different functions of the national and the state government, and therefore that is highlighted? Or the shared roles that the two tiers have? Or are we still allowing a central government to dictate the state roles? So these are the different way by which we can look at it in terms of structure. In terms of distribution of power, it can be symmetric or asymmetric. I think this is important for us because how much power do we give every state government? Do we give them equal powers, or there are state governments which have more power than other state governments? In a symmetric form of government, same powers and responsibilities are provided to all constituent units, such as in the United States of America. Otherwise, it is an asymmetric system, wherein powers of subunits vary, such as in Spain. There are areas in Spain, for example, which has greater autonomy than others, but they are still federal. So we may want to explore these ideas. So in this sense, how do we treat federalism? I think that's an important question. How do we treat federalism? Is federalism a nuisance? in the sense that it doesn't really matter because all units of the state cooperate with one another? Do we see it as an engine of prosperity because we see states competing with each other, and therefore we see one state doing well with one product or one skill or one item, and another state doing its best in another? Or do we see federalism as compromise? It's bargaining between the national federal government and the state government. So I think these are the things that we have to consider when we look at, for example, federalizing the Philippines, and especially looking at the case of Mindanao. Okay. Now, the general point of this discussion is for us to explore the place of Mindanao in the current push for federalism. The first question would be, how could it be beneficial for the people of Mindanao? I think this is an important question that our panelists can respond to. How beneficial is federalism? Or conversely, how detrimental can federalism be, if ever? Because we don't just look at the positive, we also have to look at the possible negative effects. No? What are the repercussions of adopting a federal system, particularly in the case of Mindanao? So what are the advantages and the disadvantages? I think that would be all for now, and I would like the members of the panel to reflect on these questions as they give their statements.
Okay, thank you, Professor Go. Now, is there any, I think he has raised several vital questions. Any member of the panel who is ready to react or to raise their point, please feel free to, please raise your hand to be acknowledged. Yes, Mr. Ledesma. So it should not be beyond 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
The essence of why, let's say here in Mindanao, there had been a history of Mindanaons asking for greater autonomy or self-rule is because it had been disadvantaged by a unitary form of government, and that is far from the and so what benefits now do we say can Mindanao have from the federal system of government? In my case, I have been involved from the time in 1970s when there was this movement of the Minsupala, Mindanao, Sulu, Palawan. And then after that came the secessionist movement of the Moro people, and also of the Mindanao State movement headed by Ruben Canoy. And then the latest was the One People Mindanao movement. So it has been proven in the past that faster and greater development can happen when people have greater participation in self-governance. And I think that is one argument that we can say justifies or put into place the benefits that federal system of government can bring about to Mindanao.
Yes, anyone? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'll try to deal with the issue of why do we need to federalize? Why do we have to go federal? And to be very frank, my position is that we need to amend the Constitution and shift towards a federal form of government in the Philippines because the government cannot fully comply with its commitments in the peace agreements that it signed with the moral groups if it does not amend its Constitution and shift towards the federal government. And I will explain. First, the current legal framework, which is the 1987 Constitution, is a unitary constitution. It means that the powers of government is held only by one single indivisible institution, and that sovereignty cannot be divided. That is the traditional conception of how a unitary government is organized. And that is also perfectly reflected in the Constitution of the Philippines. And I'll cite very specifically the provision of the Constitution that deals with the grant of powers to the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao. That's Article 10, Section 20 of the 1987 Constitution. While it lists 9 powers that are granted the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao, the operative phrase in the beginning of that constitutional provision is subject to the Constitution and national laws. The autonomous regional government may exercise the following powers. Meaning, even if these powers are granted the regional government, these powers will have to be exercised first in accordance with the Constitution. Second, will have to be subject to national laws, meaning laws passed by Congress. And these national laws may be laws previously enacted by Congress or laws that may be enacted by Congress. So in effect, in the exercise of your power in the regional government, these legislations, these powers that are exercised will have to be subordinated to the exercise of that all-powerful institution called Congress. So it can, in effect, amend laws that are enacted by the regional legislative assembly. It can also repeal these laws. So what is the inherent problem in this kind of a setup? It continues to give instability in terms of policies at the regional level. Because even if you want this kind of policies and you legislate it, it would still have to comply with the changes that may be made by Congress, either in compliance with the previously enacted law or laws that may be enacted by Congress in the future. So that really is a big problem in the autonomous regional government. In essence, there is no decentralization of power because power ultimately still belongs to that holder, which is called Congress. And therefore, autonomy is not a reality in the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao. Can you change that by enacting a new law, say a Bangsamoro Basic Law? No, because in the hierarchy of laws, the Constitution dictates the kinds of laws that may be enacted. Whatever law you enact, you still have to submit to the restrictions of the legal framework, which is the Constitution. Which is why, if we do not dismantle the unitary setup in the country, which is provided by the Constitution, you can never fully implement the agreements that you've signed with the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. Why? Because in the comprehensive agreement on the Bangsamoro, there is a listing of powers, which is similar to the setup in a federal system. In a federal system, you have a federal list and a state list, and powers that are concurrent to both, meaning shared powers, powers that can be exercised by both. But the state list, that can only be exercised by the state. The federal list may only be exercised by the federal government. So there's a clear demarcation of the powers that may be exercised. In the case of a unitary system, in the case of what we have in the Constitution, all powers ultimately belongs to one national entity, and it cannot be changed. Therefore, we will have to shift to a federal and amend the Constitution.
Thank you, sir. There will be another round. Yung
Oh, okay. Maraming salamat, Madam Moderator. Ipapangamahanin lang ninyo dahil hindi ako masyado magaling sa English. Makaunawa ng konti, pero I'm not so, fluent sa English. Sa usaping federalism, kami, I'm representing Lumad Mindanao, which is the organization ng mga sabihin namin, original people dito sa Mindanao, kasama ng mga Bangsamoro. Hindi pa namin gaano naunawaan, sir, kung ano itong unitary system of governance. Here we come, we are again discussing about federalism. Kasi kung titingnan ninyo, ang kinatatakutan namin dito is baka final na talaga ang sakripisyo ng mga katutubo. Because originally, nung wala pa itong sistemang ito, ay federal na ito. Kasi halimbawa, we are 30 different tribes in Mindanao. And we are living, we are existing, pamamagitan na mutual coexistence, mutual respect and coexistence. Kung mayroon kaming mga problema, madali naming marisolba. Kasi walang super. Hindi gaya ngayon na mayroon tayong Manila imperialism. Marisolba lang kung magpunta ka doon. Kung wala kang pamasahe, din problema mo. Anyan ang problema namin. Kasi kahit naman may pamasahe kami, hindi kami makapunta doon kasi matakot kami mawala because hindi namin teritoryo ang Manila. Bawat tribo, mayroon kaming teritoryo na sa paniniwala namin, sir, is that is been endowed to us by the great creator. Kasi kung may manubo man sa New York, malamang galing doon sa Cotabato yan, o malamang galing yan sa Agusan. Wala nang ibang lugar na nalalagyan ng mga katutubo. Doon lang sa kanilang tinatawag na ngayon na ancestral domain. Tawag namin yan is, yan ang binigay sa amin ng buong may kapal. Hindi ang binigay ng gobyerno. Kasi itong gobyerno, 1898 pa ito eh. Kami, beyond that, since time immemorial ang timeline namin. So, sa amin, sir, is, kailangan siguro, kasi balikan ko ng konti, itong pasalamat na kung sana republika itong Ateneo di Davao, siguro masaya kami. Kasi may mga forum, ganito ng pakikinabi, we are always remembered, we are always invited. Kasi you have to remember na the 17 years sa Imailip, gusto sana namin sumali kahit observer lang. Pero we were not allowed. Ngayon, mayroon namang peace process. Ang Dima, noong June 8, noong pakikinabi dito, sinabihan ko, kasi kunti lang distansya namin ka Fidel Agkawili. Sabi ko, we are interested to participate because we hosted your revolution for almost 50 years. Or maybe we are hostage of your revolution for almost 50 years. So we want to participate in the peace process. So ito, sir, we have to consider, before jumping to federalism, mas mabuti siguro we have to reflect on the history of Mindanao. Kasi kung titingnan mo, sir, nagiging minority ang mga original peoples dito because sa desisyon ng Manila government. Ano nangyari? Noong may agrarian problema sa Central Luzon at sa Visayas, anong ginawa nila? Ginawa nila ang resettlement program. Inikarga sa barko, hinati dito sa Mindanao at tinawag na Land of Promise. We were happy then kasi akala namin kasali kami sa promise. Yung pala promise ng taga Luzon at sa Visayas. So ito lang ang very concerned ko, sir, na you have to consider because we are still asking for justice. Kasi walang peace. Kasi peace is only parang kuha na lang yan. Seal na lang yan sa justice. Kasi kung if we jump to development, etc. para sa Mindanao, kami, we're asking, sana ba yung justice dito? Kasi hanggang ngayon, yung lupa namin, naubos na. Una, inubos ng logging. Sino nagbigay ng timber license agreement? Taga Manila. Ngayon, wala ng forest. Problema tayo ng climate change. Pero nakita ng mga miners na mayroon parang ginto doon sa ilalim ng tinubuan ng lawa nung araw. So ngayon, so we have this problem of mining. So ito, we have to consider, we have to reflect on the past before jumping to discussing this federalism. Kasi para sa amin, kung mayroon mang federalism, they have to recognize the integrity of territory. Yung sabi nilang ancestral domain. Kasi kung hindi yan kilalanin, maybe mga ilang years ngayon, parang nucleus naman ang rebellion. Sa ngayon, wala pa kaming capacity mag-rebuilde. Kasi we learn sa sistema na ito sa unitary, kung hindi ka mag-rebuilde, hindi ka pakinggan. So imagine, yung mga may peace process, yan ang nagre-rebuilde kami, wala talaga, we are only but collateral damage, sabi nila. So that's all, ma'am, kasi mataas na.
Thank you, sir. You will have another chance later. Si sir, sorry.
Magandang hapon po sa lahat. Mayang hapon ka ninyong tanan. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me start with what my brother have said. The descendants of Mamalu. We are descendants of Tabunaway. Tabunaway and Mamalu are two brothers. Mamalu, Tabunaway became Muslim, and Mamalu remained steadfast with their native indigenous faith. In some of them were Christianized. And these are the people who constitutes the majority of all the hinterlands, all ancestral domains in Mindanao. So let me start with the historical roots and shared struggle of Mindanao as one people. Noong una, pre-colonial Mindanao, meron tayong Sultanate of Maguindanao, merong Buayan Sultanate, merong 4 na pangampong in Lanao, merong Sultanate of Sulu. And these were sovereign states. They exercised government authority. They were contracting treaties. They had treaties, they have commercial trade in foreign countries. And then came Mindanao under colonial rule, under the Americans, which was declared as Moro Province. The Moro Province was then divided subsequently into the Northern Mindanao and the Moro Province that now constitutes the areas that are covered by the 1976 Tripoli Agreement. And then you have the Declaration of Mindanao Independence of Dato Untog Matalam. Then came the Dansalan Declaration objecting to the annexation of Mindanao to the Republic of the Philippines, to the Americans. And then you have the War for Independence of the Moro National Liberation Front aimed at decolonizing the entire islands of Mindanao, including Palawan. Then you have the 1987 MNLF-GRP Jeddah Accord, signed by Senator Pimentel and Nulmi Suare, that provides autonomy for the entire islands of Mindanao and Palawan. Then came the Mindanao Agenda in 1998, whereby the MNLF went around Mindanao and campaigned for the so-called Mindanao Agenda. The proposal then was to make Mindanao as one federal state, Visayas as one federal state, Metro Manila as one, and the rest of Luzon as one federal state. Then came, before that, independent movement, led not by the Muslim, not by a Muslim, but a Christian, in the person of Ruben Canoy. Then, the most recent was the One People Mindanao that wanted to have independence in Mindanao, and this is led by the one who is now in Malacanang and the one who is now in the House of Representatives. So, this only means that Mindanao have shared struggle as one people. For this reason, we are proposing for a Federal Republic of the Philippines consisting of these regional states. One, Mindanao, which is 24 million, Visayas, 19 million, Southern Luzon, 23 million, Metro Manila, 12 million, Northern Luzon, 21 million. We have gone further into our main speaker discussant talk about powers of national government and regional states. We have proposed that the national government shall retain these powers: national security, foreign relations, currency, monetary system. Hindi naman maaring dollar ang pera natin dito sa Manila peso, no? Baka magkalito-lito tayo. So it should be national government that shall have jurisdiction over that. External trade, citizenship, immigration, administration of justice, which includes Supreme Court, Court of Appeals, and a tribunal of intergovernmental affairs or relations that shall decide on conflict of laws between regional states and national government. And then, of course, national government shall retain power on transportation, national finance, and others. The regional states shall have powers that shall address the basic necessities, particularly those basic government services that are now already devolved to local government units. But beyond that, regional states must have power over agriculture, forestry, fisheries, environment, natural resources, solid waste management, sanitary landfill, kasamang sa Timoy, ancestral lands. This should now be given to regional states. And then all matters regarding ancestral lands, ancestral domains, and agrarian reform. Mining, because tayo ang naapektuhan sa irresponsible mining. No? Health, education, labor and employment, tourism, trade and industry, science and technology, social welfare, regional transportation, internal security, meaning referring to police matters. That should be within the jurisdiction and power of regional states and others. Now, we also have cooperative. We also advocate for cooperative federalism in that national government and regional states shall have shared powers, such as matters on administration of federal laws, national defense and state elections, health, education, social welfare, sports, public safety, energy. At present, there is now an ongoing conversation or negotiations between the ARMM and national government to co-manage all matters pertaining to minerals that are energy-based. No? So we propose a co-management between regional government and national government on energy, on tourism, highways, airports, railways, etc.
Okay.
With regard to Bangsamoro issue, that was articulated by Attorney Naguib Sinarimbo, we feel that there should be a special law that shall be entrenched in the Constitution, so it will no longer be subject to change, such that we propose that in terms of establishing or entrenching the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region, the terms of references that shall be incorporated into the Constitution or a separate law, which will be incorporated into the Constitution, will be based on the peace agreements negotiated or agreed between national government and MNLF as well as the MILF.
Okay. Thank you, sir. There will be another round later for additional points. Yes, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon po sa lahat.
Good
Ako lang pala ang
afternoon.
babae dito except for the moderator. I don't really represent the women because I think I should only represent myself because women by themselves are diverse and would have different empowerment and different opinions. So this is just an opportunity for me to provide some thoughts concerning women and federalism. They actually take the point of view of a political scientist, a feminist Professor Gilles Vickers of Canada, who has had a long scholarship on gender and federalism. And the point of view that I'm looking through is what we call the federalism advantage, which is a feminist argument that federalism's characteristic may provide women with different political opportunities, but require different strategies from how we know it here in the Philippines, working at the unitary state. Why am I very emphatic about this? Precisely because with federalism, whatever the form will be and whatever problems it is supposed to legally and structurally solve, it is important for women individually at the communities and as well as organized women actually rethink the strategies that they will be doing in terms of claiming their space in the federalism process and the structure. This is really important because tayo mga babae, sanay po tayo unitary state, no? But actually it will be very, very different, not necessarily difficult, so we have to have a change of paradigm. Why am I saying this? Usually, and this is quite correct, federalists, broadly speaking, make three very positive claims to which I personally agree. First of all, that federalism increases democracy. It can manage diversity, and particularly here in Mindanao, we have a very big opportunity concerning that because Mindanao is one of the most diverse islands in the whole Philippines. And third, but not the least, the neoliberal claims about efficiency. Yon, medyo meron din akong agam-agam doon, but I think it can be done. However, these claims, and as well as the claim that federalists make concerning conflict management and equity for territorial minorities, affect majority women and minority women differently, depending on your level. And I think this is a very important point when you're looking at it from the political science point of view. Political scientist po ako bago ako nag-abogado. So, nevertheless, gender scholarship actually shows as well that the claim for democracy applies positively to women, but only if, and only if, there are favorable circumstances, that is, that women enjoy the security, enough security to organize effectively. And this is a little bit difficult when you have a conflict paradigm that is actually in place in majority of Mindanao. The second point I'd like to make really is really also a challenge concerning gender reform. I lived for 17 years in Switzerland, which is still a federal system. And here I can see that in terms of the advocacy of women for gender reform, women have to organize themselves at different levels. Madami akong kwento dyan. Nevertheless, it's important to do this. I'll make a little kwento kasi I still have a little bit more time. 1 minute. Yeah, I know. I just saw. So, but this kwento is very important because I was pregnant in Switzerland and I had a midwife who came and tried to help me, and she was in black. And this was when I realized that the women were fighting for the right to have maternal insurance. The problem is that Switzerland is composed of 26, 27 cantons. Majority of the vote voted for it, but not enough cantons or states voted for it. Kasi dapat kasi double positive. Which means that the women issue was basically put down by several traditionalist conservative cantons, despite the fact that it was an international human rights issue, it was for women, and majority of the electorate voted for it. So what does this mean? That really the organization of women's human rights advocacy has to be at different levels. And you can only do that when there is enough security for women to organize, and of course, that there are the political opportunities that are institutionalized for women to fight for their human rights.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir. Would you like to say something, Mr. Lorenzana?
If I may, I would like to address only two things. In fact, I would like Bong and Tinoy to go further and debate the role of Tinoy into the scheme of things before I talk about federalism. Because as my friend Tinoy here, o sa Tagalog lang sa Binisaya, malisuran pa siya kaput sa unitary. Kung ako mag-istorya na ako, I will talk about federalism, I will talk about the preconditions of federalism, I will talk about the steps towards federalization, mawala ang akong mga amigo, ka-importante siya. Therefore, I am like the students now, I would like to learn from Tinoy and from Bong, and I would like them to further elaborate para maklaro na ito tandaran, because it's useless to talk about the concepts, the nuances of federalism, unless the problem of what Timoy was saying can be inculcated into the scheme of things. Bong, di ba? Oo lang.
Okay, thank you. Yes, would you like to say, comment on that point, Professor Go?
Yeah, I think it is important to raise the awareness on what are the problems, because
Yeah.
if we really want to move towards federalism, we really have to have a grasp of the problems. Ano ba ang mga problemang kinakaharap natin? Kasi tinitingnan natin ang federalismo bilang solusyon eh. Pero kung hindi natin mahanap ang mga problema, kung hindi natin ito mapag-usapan,
Then we cannot
saan tayo
establish.
pupunta?
Yeah.
I also like the point on how we look at the majority women and the minority women, because we also treat them differently. And I think how will federalism come into play in this kind of situation? So perhaps, as requested by Mr. Lorenzana, they can elaborate further.
Okay, thank you. So I think it was articulated, no? Ang sabi ng kasama natin na lumad, hindi pa namin masyadong naintindihan kung ano itong unitary, because your experience of the unitary system is such that you were marginalized and your ancestral domain were compromised, right? Then now suddenly we talk about the possibilities of federalism, no? Okay, so would you like to elaborate that, and then we go to Attorney Parcasio? Yes, please. Sandali lang, sir, ha? Ang punto dito is, we want a vibrant discourse, but now we are saying, may kanya-kanyang rason bakit kinakailangan ang federalism, and I think that is well established. The MNLF has very specific roadmap on how to proceed with it. I think the MILF, picking from their experience in the peace agreement in the previous administration, they know what to do with that. But prior the steps, let us settle first the answer to the question, what is the need for it now? By naming the problem that confronts, for example, the lumad. Okay, can you please continue?
Okay. Daghang salamat, ma'am. Thank you very much. Bali, sa amin naman, hindi naman kami, kasi kadalasan sa amin, mga katutubo is we are always misunderstood. Maliban pa doon, we are always discriminated. And we are also thanking na pasalamat kami na we are discriminated because being discriminated meaning, ang ibig sabihin niya, iba ka. Problema lang dito ma'am, is the system that is prevailing in this country is still yung konsepto ng mga colonizer, halimbawa, regalian doctrine. Walang abogado sa Pilipinas na hindi mga abogado kaya hindi maniwala sa regalian doctrine. Na ang lupa dito sa Pilipinas ay ang may-ari ay ang gobyerno. Pero sa totoo lang, wala pa itong gobyerno. Halimbawa kami sa Manobo, hindi kami naniwala na amin itong buong Mindanao. Kasi bawat isa sa amin, bawat tribo ay may kanyang teritoryo. Kasi ito, kung may lumad na walang teritoryo, malaking question mark yan. Kasi lahat kami may ancestral domain. Now, as a predicate, sir, ito lang ang masasabi namin. Kasi kahit na ganito kami, pero we have also, kasi hindi naman turo sa aming mga ninuno na maging sakim. Hakog, wala na sa mo. Mao nga nakasulod ang mga Kristiyano diri sa Mindanao, kay dili midalo. Hindi kami sakim. Kasi naniwala kami na you are human being, so we expect you to treat us the same way. Kasi kung magsabi ka ng Manobo, the meaning of that is human being. Now, if you believe that you are a human being, therefore you are Manobo. As simple as that. Pero ang problema ngayon, kasi iba, because yung yung colonization, yung European, yung Western, ito yung namahagi sa karamihan sa atin. Because you've been believing na you are the majority. Pero the reality is, we represent the natural world. So, ibig sabihin, we are more than you. Because we are the representative of the trees, we are the representative of the creation na hindi makapagsalita. We are, kasama namin yan. Pero you are looking at us only as human being. Ignorante, pangit, uban pa diha nga. Kay gipaang ko naman gud sa amo, nga mga lumad, ang di maayo. So, ang framework na mo ani is kung doon ay federalism, is there must be at least a federalism within federalism. You have to recognize. Hangyo lang namo, you have to recognize the integrity. Kasi nandyan sa palaging sinasabi ng mga katutubo na land is life. Ibig sabihin, sa aming mga teritoryo, sa aming ancestral domain, nandyan galing yung aming pagkatao. Walain mo yan, i-reduce mo yan into ilang hektarya, nawawala na yung sabihin natin building block ng aming pagkatao. So meaning to say, kung mawala yan, we are redound to oblivion. Mawawala kami dito. So yan lang, sa aming framework ngayon, ma'am, is one tribe, one territory, one governance. Yun ang framework namin. Ibig sabihin, hindi ito buong Mindanao, kundi bawat tribo. Bawat tribo kasi importante ang diversity. Importante ang diversity. Walain mo kasi gawin mong monolithic ang isang society, we cannot survive in this world. So yan ang predicate namin, ma'am, na at least you have to recognize us. Because the unitary government never recognize us. They only have a lip service, pero there is no service at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the point is well stated, no? A reminder that in the discourse of the federal alternatives for Mindanao, the homogenizing framework that seemed to dominate the mentality should be revisited, and we consider the difference and the issue of the reclaiming of the identity of the Lumad, and we should never homogenize, no? I mean, the issue of identity, difference, and the right to ancestral domain of the Lumad are all intertwined, and this should be considered. So I don't know, I think Attorney Parcasio, then Attorney, would you like to say something later?
Allow me to state this as simple as I can. No?
Okay.
Kasi daghan tayong mga kauban diri nga gikan sa kabarangayan. No? Ang akong gisulti nga ganiya, is not only reflective of the view of the MNLF, but most especially the kilusang federal sa pagbabago. I had a conversation with Chairman Normiswari last night, and he is in full agreement of the concept of Mindanao as one federal state. Now, after having gone through several brainstorming with my colleagues in the KPP, we are all in agreement that there are historical reasons and, of course, economic reasons why Mindanao should be considered as one federal state. But going back to the conversation with the MNLF, it dates back to 1987 when Senator Pimentel and Ms. Wari signed the Jeddah Accord. And niyadtong panahon na, katong bago pa si Cory nga presidente, doon na ikipirmahan nga dokumento ang MNLF o ang government para maundang na yun ang girab tali sa MNLF o sa pagamhanan. O ang gisulti sa maong dokumento, the document states that there shall be created a joint commission which will discuss in draft the mechanism and details of the proposal for the grant of full autonomy to Mindanao. No? It does not speak of the ARMM. It speaks of all of Mindanao. And take note that when the MNLF speaks of the Moro, it does not refer only to Islamized indigenous peoples, but also refers to Christianized indigenous peoples, and recently, it also encompasses migrants to Mindanao. No? Now, that's one. That's why we agree that Mindanao shall be one federal state. When Ms. Wari and Pimentel signed that, and there was no enabling law under the Cory administration, what took place was a constitution that provides on Section 5, Article 10, that the autonomous regions, and this not only refers to Mindanao, but it also refers to Cordillera. It says here, kanang autonomous region will consist of the provinces, cities, municipalities, and geographical areas. So the limitation is not very particular on, it could go beyond, it could pierce through the boundaries of local government units, in that it refers to geographical areas sharing common and distinctive historical and cultural heritage, economic and social structure, and other relevant characteristics. That means it refers to the descendants of Mamalo and Tabunaway. If you don't know Mamalo and Tabunaway, pangutan-an ninyo ang inyong mga professor sa history, unsa ba ni siya, no? Meaning that if you go through this standard in the Constitution, and by the way, whenever we talk to government, we always invoke this provision. Ironically, government panel does not want to invoke this, because this would mean, covering the entire island of Mindanao, Sulu, Palawan, Basilan, and Tawi-Tawi. That is the context. But that's the thinking of the MNLF. So Ms. Wari is in full agreement, and that's why he campaigned in 1998 that all the peoples in Mindanao should be as one and advocate for one people Mindanao, so the one people Mindanao so-called agenda, the Mindanao agenda. The Mindanao agenda, of course, it would be difficult to have one federal state because that cannot take place under the Constitution. There has to be amendment to the Constitution. Yes.
The comms team of the university is reminding us, if possible, that we speak either in Filipino or in English, because as the conversation proceeds, we are live on Twitter and on Facebook and outside also of the country. So for purposes of
Yes.
accessibility. Yes, thank you.
That is the predicament of colonization. No, we have to, you know.
But the advantage
to
of
suffer that.
globalization.
That's why a Filipino, they say that the Indonesians and Malaysians are quick thinkers than Filipinos. Bakit naman? Ang dami yung magagaling sa amin. Kasi sabi nila, before we think, we have to think whether our sentence is grammatically correct or not. So, there are two processes within our subconscious. Well, anyway, yun po yung basihan now. Hindi naman maaari na Mindanao lang ang federal state. So, kaya nga, ang proposal is, lahat dapat mag-benefit sa proposal na ito. Kaya, hence the proposal of Mindanao Federal State, Visayas Federal State, Metro Manila, Southern Luzon, and Northern Luzon.
Okay, thank you. Now, Attorney Sinarimbao. Then after that, I will go back to Mr. Lorenzana. Okay?
Para ho medyo mas malinaw, pipilipino ho ako para ho magkaintindihan tayo ng mas maigi. Una, yung issue ng mga indigenous peoples na katulad ho namin na nitibo sa Mindanao at nire-recon yung origination sa mga panahong hindi na natin maalala o yung since time immemorial. Yung pong pagdurusa natin ay pareho. Yung mga descendants ni Mamalu at kaming mga descendants ni Tabunaway ay pareho yung naging problema namin. At ang talagang problema rito ay nawala yung mga lupa namin dahil sa pagpasok ng kolonyalismo. At pagkaminsan ay pinagpatuloy ng gobyernong nasa Manila yung mga pulisiyang sinimulan ng mga kolonyal na pwersang pumasok sa atin. Maalala nyo, nung pagsimula ng 19th century, halos buong Mindanao ang naka-occupy ay sila at kami. At kukunti lamang yung mga settlers na dumating. But in a span of less than 50 years, ang tragic na nangyari sa atin ay nabaliktad yung demography. Yung demographic makeup of Mindanao has been radically changed, but you cannot recognize it. Yung mga kapatid natin na katutubo ay napunta na sa bundok. Kami ay napunta na lang sa gilid ng Pulangi at saka sa loob ng Ligwasan Marsh. Samantalang yung mga magagandang lupa ay napunta sa mga tiga Luzon at tiga Visayas. Kaya po, yung sentimento ng mga indigenous people ay yun din yung pinaglalaban namin na mabalik man lang yung mga lupang nawala sa atin at sana naman yung gobyerno ay tanggapin na nagkamali doon sa mga pulisiyang pinatupad sa atin. Ano-ano yung mga pulisiyang yun? Pinamigay nila yung mga lupa na hindi inaalam na yun ay may pagmamayari na. Pangalawa, meron kang malawakang pagkawala ng lupa sa pamamagitan ng sinasabi nga niyang Regalian Doctrine. Samantalang ang intindi namin ay amin yung lupa, bigla na lang nagpasa ng batas sa Maynila na nagsasabing yung lahat ng lupa na hindi nairehistro sa pamamagitan ng bagong registration system, itong torrent system na nagsimula sa Australia, na naging instrumento rin ng pagkawala ng lupa ng mga aborigines sa Australia, ay in-apply sa atin at nawala biglaan yung mga lupa natin. At ito ho ay parte ng report ng Transitional Justice Commission, yung series of legislations na talaga namang discriminatory. Ang unang batas ay walang provision kung paano magkaroon ng registration yung mga lupa ng mga indigenous people at saka mga Moro. So walang paraan na maging matitulo mo yung lupang sa iyo naman. Ang pangalawa ay pinagbigyan nga na magkaroon ng paraan kung paano may rehistro yung lupa, discriminatory naman yung number na pwede mong i-register. Samantalang yung mga nanggaling sa labas, 24 hectares, kami ay 6 na hektarya lang. So talagang series yung discrimination na yon. At dahil doon sa nagsimula sa lupa, umakyat na rin doon sa marginalization doon sa politika. At unti-unting, ang naghari ay yung mga tao hindi naman dito sa amin. So eto ho yung buod. Eto ho yung historical injustice. ito ho yung kinakailangan nating ayusin. At ang paguna sana na paraan para mahinto ito at makorek ito ay tanggapin ng gobyerno. Ito yung dapat mayroong admission na nagkamali yung gobyerno sa mga pulisiyang ito at paghingi ng patawad dun sa mga taong na biktima ng mga pulisiya ng gobyerno ito. At ang promise na ito ay ayusin at hindi na uulitin. So parte ho ng agreement yan, doon ho sa annex on normalization, nakalagay yung transitional justice. At kinakailangan ho natin yun dahil parte ho ng problema sa Mindanao yung problema yun. Ang problema natin dito, pagka hindi natin binago yung constitution, yung issue ng land ownership ay centralized pa rin. At magulo yung sistema sa Pilipinas. Nandiyan yung administrative patent na DNR. Ultimately, ang magde-decide dyan ay Manila. Nandiyan yung perfection ng title sa korte. Ultimately, ang magde-decide dyan, Supreme Court sa Manila. Nandiyan yung NCIP. Ultimately, yung commission pa rin na nakaupo sa Manila ang magdidesisyon nito. Ang panawagan namin, kung baguhin man natin yung konstitusyon at ayusin natin yung issue ng lupa na malaking kawalan sa amin at sa mga indigenous peoples na kasama namin, iibaba natin yung listahan na yun doon sa listahan ng states sa federal government at hayaan na ng central government na pangasiwaan natin yung pagbamanage ng lupa na yon. At baguhin natin yung konsepto ng regalian doctrine dahil maski na yung IPRA ay inadequate dahil ang binigay lang natin sa kanila ay surface rights. Hindi pa rin natin binibitiwan yung tunay na kahulugan ng pagmamay-ari ng lupa. So, kailangan pa rin talaga nating baguhin yon. Ang discourse, I think, na hindi tumama nung nag-uusap dun sa Bangsamoro Basic Law ay hindi naintindihan at ito ay hindi rin naipaliwanag ng maayos na hindi sabi ng Bangsamoro na hindi i-recognize at yung ay kung saan pag-usapan yung issue ng ancestral domain, ancestral rights ng mga indigenous people. Ang posisyon ng Bangsamoro doon sa discourse na yun ay pag-usapan natin ang tayo-tayo. Kaya doon sa listahan ng power dapat ibigay sa atin para tayo ang mag-usap. Dahil pag sumali yung central government sa usaping ito, nagiging magulo yung problema natin. Dahil traditionally, tayo naman talaga magkapitbahay at tayo naman ang magkapatid. So kaya natin pag-usapan yung problema sa lupa. Pero nung pumasok yung mga dayuhan at sinundan ng gobyerno ng Pilipinas, talaga nagkagulo tayo. So paano ba ma-resolve ito? Ibigay sa atin, ibalik sa atin at tayo ang mag-usap. At meron namang garantiya na kapatid natin na makuha nila yung dapat na kanila. Yun yung importanteng discourse. Ang naging problema lang ay hindi maganda yung pagpaliwanag at ang lumabas ay inaayawan yung karapatan ng mga kapatid nating katutubo. Hindi ho yun ang punto. Ang punto ho ay saan ba ito pag-usapan at saan ba natin i-resolve yung issue natin. So yun po yung gusto naming malinawan tayo na yun po yung discourse patungkol sa mga kapatid nating katutubo.
Thank you, Attorney, for naming that because that's a very important point, no? You clarified the issue, no? Na hindi ito anti-dalumad, but indeed you are saying na dapat i-resolve natin to kasi kayo-kayo, no? So issue ng land and the political space where to resolve this. Now, Mr. Lorenzana, would you like to comment on this? On the points raised?
A few comments. Number one is, itong pinagsasabi ni Attorney, very articulate, si Narimbo, is basically, itong tinatawag na transitional justice, historical justice, you don't have to have federalism to look into this. See? Because federalism is a complex series of work shifting from unitary to a more complex system of government, which actually, in the final analysis, is more simplified than what we have now. But the way ang presentation mo ngayon is above anything else, central to the concept of even touching the concept of federalism or unitary is you want justice. Ganun rin kaya, di ba? Historical justice. And it seems to me that you don't even have to discuss federalism when you want this justice, no? But I want to bring us back to the original concept of unitary to federalism. So we can put this aside. Pwede ba yan muna? Because although federalism is not a panacea, it's not a solution to all problems. You bring down the lowest possible territory through, we call that subsidiarity, your lowest possible decision maker, where things like this can be discussed, di ba? Because your problem does not exist in Visayas. Your problem does not exist in Metro Manila, in Central Luzon. This is basically only Mindanao. And even in Mindanao, it doesn't hold the whole Mindanao. That's why I am a little bit reluctant yung position ni Bong na in Mindanao we should only have one federal state. Okay? We have worked so much over the years to work at the ARMM, di ba, Bong? And a lot of people are already saying we should have 3 states in Mindanao. In fact, Nene Pimentel has been going all around saying that there should be 11 federal states. Now, I want to refocus there because that is where we can solve your problem. Because your problem is not a problem in Metro Manila. It is a problem here. So perhaps if we try to come down and focus on federalism, which, as you said, is a shared sovereignty between federal, and then we can really discuss it here. Okay? Like City Moay, Samba City Moay. They said one tribo, one territory. Okay. Oh, one governance. Does that mean that they will have their own federal territory? Okay. Now, I want to clarify that. Can they not work within, let's say, Southern Mindanao? The Southern Mindanao territory, which autonomous territory, which is going to be a future state of Southern Mindanao, is composed of the 4 Davao provinces plus Kumbal. Yan ang position ni Nene Pimentel. ARRM and the Northern Mindanao. Okay? So tatlo or 4. Now, can the tribo, the one tribe, one territory, one governance, can they be incorporated within the autonomous territory of, or the federal state of Southern Mindanao? Okay? The other one is, if there are one tribo, one territory in ARMM, can they be accommodated there? Di ba, Bong? So this is what we call the negotiating process. Because you see, contrary to what we are saying, federalism cannot happen even during the time of Duterte. Okay? Federalism, para sa akin, my understanding is, we work out the Constitution in order that the framework for federalism will be put in. Because in order to come up with federal states, it is necessary that provinces must negotiate. They have first to negotiate anong territory natin. That's why we have what we call ethnocentricity. Pareha tayo ng language, pareha tayo ng similar culture. So, doon natin gagamitin yan. Okay? So, this is one of the things which I want to refocus our mind.
Okay.
Because things like that can be decided in the federal state, but this can be decided only by negotiation. And apparently, it will take a long time by negotiation, not even during the time of our president when he says that he wants federalism in 2 to 3 years. Hindi mangyayari yan. But ang mangyayari is we can put into the Constitution the federalization process or the roadmap. Yan ang sinasabi ko.
Okay, thank you, sir. Now, before I invite the outer circle to be a party to the discussion with our, yes, ma'am, then Attorney Jimenez. And
First, I'd like to thank Attorney Nagib for bringing up the issue of transitional justice. So, yung mga hindi pa nakakabasa ng report po namin, basahin nyo na po, no? Because even though transitional justice is not necessarily the main problem, it is and will be an issue when we talk about federalism. And one of the conclusions that we put in the report is that a lot of the problems that we have with regard to the Bangsamoro is because of the imposition of a monolithic state. And this is exactly what federalism wants to avoid, because in my view, one of the ways that federalism can really, really work is to manage diversity. And I appreciate what Mr. Lorenzana said concerning negotiations. And this is where I go back to my original argument or position that here women already should be part and parcel of these negotiations. May problema kasi ako nakikita na baka eventually magkaroon ng federalism, pero the treatment of women, the laws about women are all decentralized. And this is something that is, for many of us who are very active in asserting the universal rights of women, we don't want this. Because sometimes it may come up to be that a federal state will tell us how we treat our women is none of the business of the federal level. No, we believe that it is not internal only, it is not internal to how one federal state treats its women, but this has to be at the national level and decentralized, but at the same time, getting the women in each of those federal states to be quite active in nuancing their needs, their rights, and how they want to implement it. And again, this can only happen if there is an institutionalized access to the participation of women in these negotiations from the very start. And these will have to be continuing, and if they have the security to do so, and very non-patriarchal treatment of the women, then we believe that women will have their place effectively, genuinely, in any federal system that could be brought up. Mabuhay ang kababaihan at sana po ipagpatuloy po natin ang ating struggle para sa karapatang pantao ng kababaihan.
thank you, ma'am. Yes, Sir Ledesma.
There is now a process among the advocates and proponents of federalism in Mindanao of coming together and discussing their own respective proposals about their ideas and concepts of federalism in the hope that we will arrive at what we may call a common proposition. But along that, we also recognize that federalism, even if, let's say, the unitary system of government will be replaced with a federal system of government, if there is no substantial transformation in the individual citizen and in the Filipino society in general, federalism may suffer the same failure as the unitary system. And that is why when we go about, let's say, advocating for a federal system of government, it is accompanied with an educational system wherein we Filipinos should recognize our own failures in making the unitary system succeed. We had been complacent We were not participatory in the deliberation and making decisions on policies that affect us. Maybe the only exercise of democracy that most of us have done is by casting our votes every election. So again, as I said earlier in the morning forum, the academe can play a lot of role in bringing about this internal transformation in the individual and social Filipino as a mature citizen.
Okay, sir, before we move on, can you just give us briefly elaborate, what do you mean by substantial transformation in specific terms?
It is what we call completing the aborted revolution that happened during the People Power Revolution in 1986. Meaning to say, in the process of trying to change the government, bringing about democracy in the Philippines, and fighting for justice, fighting for freedom, nung nanalo na yung nagkaroon na ng change, the process stopped. Meaning to say, the agents of change stopped working, many of them stopped working with the people. Wala nang catalyzers, no, na naiwan. Ilan lang ang naiwan dun sa mga grassroots and sa mga brother IPs natin. Like myself, I come from the Bagobo tribe here in Davao, no? So walang naiwan, no, to continue the catalyzing transformation that is needed to bring about a more empowered Filipino citizen who can participate in democratic processes.
Yes, sir.
Considerations that we must look into in the configuration of federal states is our historical, cultural heritage, and of course the economic potentials of each state. That's why we are batting for a one Mindanao federal state, because by cultural heritage, social structure, more particularly historical background, the people in Mindanao are one people. And it even extends up to Palawan. No? Let me just cite you a concrete example. For example, yung ating mga kapatid na katutubo, pag pupunta ka sa Davao del Sur, Davao Occidental, may mga manobo. You'll be surprised, may mga manobo din sa Sultan Kudarat. Meron rin sa North Cotabato. And then, you go far north, meron din sa itong Cumbal Valley, Compostela Valley. And then you go farther north, you have Agusan, Surigao. May, di ba, may mga nung tawag namin nung una, hindi IP. We call them mga natibo because they are the native inhabitants of the place. No? So, if you, again, use the colonizing formula of dividing these people, you are not addressing the historical injustice. Now, we are one people in Mindanao. Now, please understand the underlying factor of the history of Tabunaway and Mamalu. We belong to one state, we belong to one nation, and we belong to one homeland called Mindanao, Basilan, or Minsupala, in short. No? So, economically, we see that if we fragmentalize the country into 13 states or 11 states, there will be poor states, no? Which will be subsidized by rich states. We would not like that to happen. We want that in establishing regional states, each state must be economically robust and that it could stand economically, so it will not be a mendicant state waiting for and begging for subsidy from national government. So it would be more equitable in the sharing of powers that there shall be only 6 regional states across the Philippines. Now, for symbols, just symbols. Northern Luzon, the symbol is Gabriela. Sino pa? Is Diego Silang coming from Northern Luzon? Metro Manila, you have Raja Sulaiman and the rest. In Southern Luzon, you go to Calamba because we consider you have Rizal and others. You go to the Visayas, you have Lapu-Lapu and Daguhoy. You come to Mindanao, sino? If you read the historical book, sino? Wala. Because it is not written in the historical books. No? Look at these heroes. They're all coming from Visayas in Luzon. They have forgotten Mindanao even in our historical books. It is only lately na sinasali si Sultan Kudarat, sinasali si Amay Pakpak. My children are asking me, sino ito, Ama Haji, si Amay Pakpak? May Pakpak ba yan? No? He's a hero coming from Lanao. No? And there are several heroes. Sooner or later, future generations will tell that Hashim Salamat, Miswari are heroes of Mindanao. No? So, if you want, if we are following the statements of the President about historical injustice, and if we establish federalism in the country, it is not just, dividing in accordance with statistics or geographical considerations or number of provinces. It should be based and should be deeply rooted on historical justice and the economic potentials as well as common cultural heritage. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Professor Go, and after Professor Go, we move on to the outer circle.
Okay. I would just like to second on the point raised by Mr. Ledesma about citizenship, because I think that's a key if you want to succeed in any endeavor, because changing from unitary to federal form of government is just in terms of organization and structure. Okay, we have to also look at the agency behind these structures and what kind of citizens do we have? Are these or are they, perfunctory, pedantic citizens, and therefore, even if we change the form of government, or even if you experiment into a hybrid, unitary, federal, whatever, and if the citizens will not respond to it, it would be hard for us to achieve, development or, so we really need cooperation of the citizens, the agency aspect.
So not only structural, but citizenship development, no? Okay. Can we, one very short comment, sir, then we now go to the outer circle.
I need to say it because oftentimes nakakalimutan. Una, yung pong parte ng historical injustice na sinasabi namin ay yung kawalan ng sariling pagpapasya ng mga Bangsamoro. So ever since the birth of the Philippine Republic, nawala na ho sa amin yon. Ang desisyon na ngayon ay galing ng Manila. So kung sino gusto nila mamuno sa amin, yun yung nasusunod. So yung pong sistema na maibalik sa amin yon, ang nakikita namin ay yung sistema na una yung implementation ng agreement, pangalawa yung pag-shift sa federalism para maibaba yung pagpapasya doon sa mga tao at hindi ho yung pili sa taas. It's that the loss of the right to decide on our own. Yes. Second one is that if we don't amend the Constitution, we will not be able to entrench the agreement. The agreement provides that it cannot be implemented unilaterally by either party. If you have the same Constitution there and it's reduced into a law, the amendment or repeal or revision of this law now lies solely with Congress. The other party who signed the agreement would no longer be there, and therefore it becomes a unilateral implementation. So you need an entrenchment clause to allow that to happen. Yung mutual pa rin yung pagbabago doon sa kasunduan because this is not an ordinary legislation. This is a peace agreement that calls for the actions of both parties for it to be amended or repealed. The third one that I think is important also is that in the discourse for federalism, it is important to realize that when we move towards that discourse, it becomes a national determination. Meaning it would not just be an agreement between the MILF and government, it would now be a conversation among a larger public, larger people that includes people that have different issues from the issues that you have. Which is why, in the federal project, we should be able to entrench a provision in the federal constitution that allows an act of self-determination by the individual states. That when you have a federal constitution, the writing of a state constitution that governs the internal affairs of the territory granted the power should be left to the people of the territory. In the case of the Bangsamoro, we should be allowed to do a state constitution for the Bangsamoro on the basis of the agreements that we signed with government so that we can take back the right to self-determination from the process of a national determination for federalism. So I think that's an important point.
Thank you. Yes. Yes, sir. Last. By the way, for the members of the panel in the inner circle, this is not the last time you will speak. But we will move to the, after Jimmy, yes.
Well, very short, konti lang itong sa akin. Actually, federalism, as we understand it is a right of self-determination. Sabi ni brother dito, na sariling papapasya. Kung sa Bisaya pa na, kaugalingnan. From the word kaugalingon. As early as 1986, when Lumad Mindanao was inaugurated somewhere in North Cotabato, yan na ang pinagkaisahan ng mga tribal leaders na barugan ang kaugalingong pagdumala. Kasi isa sa gusto namin, na isa sa maaring bigyan din yung full implementation ng batas na 10 years in the making itong 8371 o Indigenous People Rights Act. Kasi nandiyan na yung 4 bundles, basic yan. Yung karapatan sa lupang ninuno, yung karapatan sa sariling pagpapasya, yung cultural integrity, nalimutan ko na yung apat. Pero nandiyan na yung nandiyan yung fundamentals ng self-determination ng katutubo. And of course, kailangan din ibatay natin yung napasa ng United Nations noong September 13, 2007 na United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. Article 3 on that base is hinggil sa right of self-determination. Itong right of self-determination namin ay wala kaming planong mag-take over sa gobyerno. Sa buong mundo, sa 370 million indigenous peoples of the world, we share na wala kaming ugaling mag-colonize o mangilog og laing tribo o mag-ulipon og laing tao. Kana lang, that is our, that is our murag ikapasirga, garbo na mo, nga among contribution sa humanity. Wala na sa amo. So kana lang, thank you very much.
Yes. Round of applause. Okay, so we now move to the next part where we will involve the outer circle in the discussion. Yes, Dr. Villa.
Okay, just a quick reminder about the housekeeping rules, no? So please put your mobile phones to silent mode or switch them off to avoid interruptions. Now, we proceed to the open forum. So Ma'am Bing will facilitate, but I'll help you call the attention of the people behind.
Now, ready? May we request everybody, for those from the outer circle, when you raise your point, before you state your point, please introduce yourselves and the organizations, if ever, that you're coming from, and then please be direct. Don't tell a story, very long story, no? Please be direct with your comments, with your reactions, or with your questions. If in case you want your questions to be answered, you may refer to whoever is the member of the panel that you want to address the question. Then we allow one person for a follow-up, and after that, we move to the next. Okay?
Yes, ma'am. Very
So-
quickly, for those who are into social media outfits or whatsoever, you may input hashtag Federal Mindanao, right? Okay, so do we have starters, questions from behind? Ma'am?
Good afternoon to each and everyone. I am Bai Alma Binayaw, IPMR of Maramag Bukidnon, Head Claimant of Central Mindanao University. Support lang po ako doon sa kay Timoy Jimel, historical injustice. Gusto talaga namin na maintindihan ang federalism, kaya pumunta ako dito. Hindi ako na-invite direct ako na sumama sa kasama ko na si Dato Bronze. Dahil sa amin, sa Indigenous Peoples Mandatory Representative, gusto namin na kung mayroon man kaming pagtitipon, may isali yung federalism. Dahil iyan ang tanong sa amin ng aming mga head claimants sa ancestral domain. Dahil doon sa amin, hanggang ngayon dumating ang Proclamation 476 ni Pangulong Garcia, 1958, na tinituluhan yung aming lupa, na wala na ang titulo, hanggang ngayon ang Central Mindanao University, wala silang pakialam sa mga katutubo. Hanggang ngayon, wala ngang ilaw ang aming mga komunidad. Kami ang may-ari ng teritoryo. Walang daanan. Sana, ang sa akin po, maturuan naman yung CMU dito sa atin sa Ateneo kung paano sila magiging totoo sa mga sinasabi na poor cultural, marami silang sinasabi na marami silang magagawa, tutulong sila. Pero sa amin, hanggang ngayon, kahit puntahan niyo doon sa amin, wala pang ilaw ang mga bahay, yung mga daanan namin binablock, kahit wala ng titulo ang CMU. Ang sa akin lang po, napunta ako doon sa Sangguniang Bayan dahil sa pag-lead ko sa aming teritoryo. At sana, dahil sa federalism na tayo ngayon, palagi nating pag-uusapan ang historical injustice. Yung totoong historical injustice, babalikan natin yung mga katutubo na since time immemorial nirahan sa kanilang mga teritoryo na nagiging yung sinabi ni Timoy kanina na parang pag lupa ang kanilang mahirap talaga magtagalog ba?
Sige, ma'am.
Yuta ang ilang gikinahanglan sa among teritoryo tungod kay ang CMU gikan siya sa Managok, gikan siya sa Mailag, ang ilang gibiyaan nga yuta giposisyonan sa ilang mga teachers. Unya nibalhin sa amua, kami ang gipahawa. Sila ang nayuta karon. Ang among intawon nga gipangtikad kadtong mga bakilid nga halos kada inadlaw nga gaharason sa mga security. O ginaot unta tungod kay Mindanao man karon ng atong topic, matudluan ang Central Mindanao University kung unsaon pagrespeto ang tribo kay sa amo daghan na gyud kay ang nangamatay karon na lang naghinay-hinay tungod kay nakalingkod na ang mga naanay mga leader nga naa nakaposisyon sa munisipyo.
Okay, ma'am.
Parehas ako ug hinaot unta pod nga sa amo sa Southern Bukidnon na sulod man mis IPS sa Manubo kay Manubo talandig man ang among tribo irespeto ang IPS para nga maayo ang atong pasabot tungod kay kami nasayod man gihatagan mi og lain-lain nga pinulungan, lain-lain nga teritoryo para among bantayan. Mga peace-loving people pero ang among pagka-peace-loving people gipahimuslan sa mga langyaw. Kana lang siya maayong hapon sa tanan.
Thank you, ma'am. So, very specific, no? Yung concern ni Madam from IPS. Okay, do we have any related, similar comment doon? Or in addition to, sige, sir. Kindly identify yourself and the organization.
Mayong hapon sa tanan, no? Una-una, I speak Cebuano dialect. I belong to the Blaan tribes of South Cotabato. I am Noni Tiala, no? I am the chairman of the DRBCI of the whole Philippines before. In addition to this particular issue, the federalism, because this is a sharing power, ang amin lang hinihingi, indirectly speaking, to the Philippine government, let me talk shortly. Ilan lahat ang presidente ang nakaraan? Walang pagbabago ang diskriminasyon sa mga natibo po. Lalo sa mga ancestral domain. You see the Republic Act, Republic 8371, grabe. Kung isipin mo the content of the Republic 8371, mga kapatid, napakaganda in favor to the lumad. But the question is, gi-implementar ba? Ang gina-implementar, kunin pa ang lupa ng mga nitibo. So, discrimination, then, ang isang tribo kapag gumising, chart pa nila, rebellion. Pero yung nitibo, peace-loving people, hindi magkaroon ng kira. Napakabuti. Ang pasalamat kami ngayon, si Presidente Duterte, ngayon, sa lahat ng presidente, i-recognize niya ang mga nitibo, ang mga katutubo. Bakit? Bakit sabi ko niyan? In Dole Philippines Incorporated, we have total of 20,000 hectare Polomolok Dolfel, occupied by Dolfel. That belong to the ancestral domain of the of our habitant since time immemorial. Pero wala kami magawa. Bakit? Manitok is everybody listen. Ano kami? Pobre, wala kami magagawa. And I would like to contact our brother MILF, but I did not contact them. Our best remedy during the time, gira na lang. Pero sabi namin, maggira tayo, wala tayong makakaya. Baril, wala tayong lahat. So, lalo tayo magkaroon ng violation. So, pasalamat kami ng mga nitibo sa Mindanao. Andito sa President Duterte, hulog ng langit sapagkat yan ang pagbabago, ang batas ng 8371. Kaya pasalamat rin ako kay Brad Timoy, represent ng minority. At sinabi namin ang katotohanan, sana kahit kunting pagtingin lang para sa mga ninubo. Kailangan ang aming i-appear, the local government to the national government, isa lang. Whatever dialogue like this, palihog, i-appeal po yung tao.
Okay.
Karon, isa pa, ang isa kanitibo, mga kalanlain og territory, may territory diri sa Davao, territory anywhere na ami, by virtue of customary law na, mga kaigsunan. But, ikaduha ang among hangyo. Hangyo man lang me. Total, ang atong presidente, kabalo sa sitwasyon sa mga kabus o timawa, ilabi sa among mga lumad. No? Among hangyo, kung aduna may mga konsultasyon sa mga organisasyon sa gobyerno, pahibalo po among mga leader, bisan pa sa barangay, dili kay i-violate lang nato ang puro president nga nitibo, murag walay respeto. O ang atong barangay captain, usahay, wa po mo agi, direkta ang order sa mga tao. Pagkatapos, blind ang mga nitibo, na biktima na po ang yuta. Di ay gasod bi, land grabbing. Igo lang kabalo. Uy, natitulo na. Ya, no read, no write good ang mga nitibo.
Okay.
Ako, nanawagan yun sa karon nga panagtigom kaning federalismo because of sharing power, share, pardon this message of indigenous people, palihog, i-appeal mi sa tanan na inyong mga activity aron tanan share of power o equal ang atong kahibalo kay behind kayo midaan unya imo pa pahimuslan ang mga nitibo.
Thank you.
So kinahanglan gyud nga equal share,
Thank
share of
you.
power. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So okay, so do we have an related or a different concern or so ang nauna we call on si Sylvester, then we have yung dalawang guys sa likod, okay? Kayong dalawa, yung naka-black kasi black shirt.
Maayong hapon. I'm Sylvester Bahit from Amnesty International and also a third-year student of International Studies, major in American Studies. Mendoza and Yap, in their study in 2013, about the link between political dynasties and poverty rate, concluded that the Philippine areas under dynasties are the poorest. Davao City with the Dutertes perhaps is the only exception that I can think of, but in the province where I come from, Davao Occidental, there are allegations that the ruling family together with their small circle of oligarch friends are the #1 violators of human rights. So in the case of land grabbing, the victims are from the poorest communities, particularly our Lumad brothers and sisters in Malita. So I cannot imagine, what would happen if states will be given sovereign power, more autonomy. Now, going back to the relationship between political dynasties and poverty rate, my question to Mr. Go and Mr. Ledesma are, one, what are the implications of a federal system to areas ruled by powerful political families? And second, how do you think a federal setup would help families and communities break out of the dynasty poverty trap? Thank you.
Okay.
Professor Go.
It's like a chicken and egg question for me. The rise of political dynasties in Philippine politics is brought about by the lack of political parties. Since we do not have stable, distinct political parties, that it tends to move towards a more personalistic politics that would even redound to us relying on families. Okay? This is also reflective of the political culture that we have, wherein earlier on we rely on, poorer families would rely on their patrons, the richer ones, for benefits in order for them to survive. And their survival is launched on that. Maybe this is more particular with farming families. And with that kind of culture, we have developed a strong reliance on specific individuals in our history. And to an extent, we have elected them into office. And this has created the trend that we usually elect families, when the father retires, maybe the wife, and then eventually the kids. Now, what would be the implication of a federal form of government in this kind of setup? We can be both optimistic and pessimistic in this possible change. Optimistic in the sense that hopefully with the change in the form of government, we'll be also able to open the electoral process to more participants. There would be more opportunities to engage. And since it is more direct than actually engaging with the national government, then perhaps there is promise of newer politicians who will be coming in, especially the those who are coming from the non-traditional elite families. However, we can also see, in a pessimistic sense, the possibility of formation of factions among existing families. Since state governments will be unions of various provinces, various oligarchs from different provinces may ally with each other in order to secure positions in the state government. And this could further entrench the political dynasties. So these are one side of the picture, okay, or one side of the coin. So those are the two possibilities, implications.
I belong to a political party which to me is one or two of those who have a very clear political ideology. Meaning to say it's a party based on philosophy and principles rather than personalities. Now, President Duterte ran under the banner of PDP Laban, and he won under that banner. So now, in many ways, the party have a problem because many of the traditional politicians would like to join and enter the party. And I think this is where the issue of how do we win over the traditional politicians who just want to perpetuate their hold in governance, and not only in governance, but even the economy of the area where they hold power. One of the tools or approaches of our party is organization, up to the grassroots level. So this has been proven recently in Tagum City, where a PDP Laban member who has no money but only has people behind him ran against an oligarch, a political dynasty, the people who are funded with their gold money, and our candidate won. Why? Because of continuing political education and organization. But I think what can be provided for in a federal constitution is to strengthen the party system in the Philippine political society. Like, for example, maybe nobody can run unless he or she belongs to a political party, and nobody can declare himself or herself a candidate unless they have been nominated by the party. And most important of all is that we Filipinos should get involved in politics and join an authentic political party that in many ways represents your particular ideology or principles.
Siguro very briefly, since nasabi na madami, no? In the end of the day, the issue of political dynasty is actually an electoral issue. We can have a political dynasty in the federal system, we can have it in a unitary system, and the form of the government itself is not necessarily the panacea of this problem. It's an electoral issue that will have to be revisited within the context of a federal system, whereby there are very specific rules. May mga suggestion na po, no, na ibigay si Mr. Ledesma, but also with regard to funding, organization, etc. The electoral rules are important regardless of what the system is. So I also would like to maybe challenge, no? I'm not very convinced about this, but there have been some federal systems whereby in the beginning they actually introduced minimum quotas for women in parties. I'm not sure if this will be working in the Philippines or not, pero pwede rin po natin pag-isipan yun. Thank you.
Thank you, yes.
Okay.
Ay, sandali lang. Yes, Mr. Lorenzana, would you like to comment on the question? Then another one.
I'd like to just present the position of several political parties, and I was very appreciative of the position of PDP Laban with Cesar here, because I am also president of the Centrist Democratic Party, the CDP, and Mayor. These are basically sister parties. And I'd like to put our position here very clearly, that federalism can only be successful if you have 4 preconditions. And the first precondition has already been said, that you have to have the indispensability of real political parties, not the type that we have today. And as Cesar said, it has to be ideologically anchored, not only formed to contest election, but more importantly, to exist in between elections, which means you have to educate your party members, and you have to be accountable to the people you put in office. That's the first precondition. The second precondition is to enact a law banning political dynasties. You cannot have Congress come up with the law to ban dynasties. They will not destroy themselves. Therefore, with the political capital of the president, he can still run this to the Constituent Assembly, where political dynasties should be banned and executory. Okay? Hindi na sabihin na by process of law. Hindi na pwede, because Congress, 90% or 80% of Congress are members of political dynasties. So therefore, the provision which should be put in the Constitution should be self-executory. Number 3 is the passage of the Freedom of Information Bill, so that we will know the type of Napoles that is coming up, the type of fake NGOs that are coming up, the money being expensed by the congressman, not only by executive order. You know, the executive order which our president signed is only for executive department, and not only that, there are 116 exemptions. So the first is political party reform, second is a banning of the dynasty, and then the Freedom of Information Bill. The fourth precondition is the initiation of electoral reforms that would put in place a system that will not pervert the will of the populace, like a system that adheres to democratic principles, like you have to eliminate vote buying. Number 1, contributions of big people are manifested, are shown, because right now, how many of these big people really contribute? So without these 4 preconditions, we are going to have a problem with federalization. Okay. That's why without without the preconditions here, this has to be in place before we start with the federalization process.
Thank you, sir. Now, there were 2 people already acknowledged, so can we have it quite quickly, Attorney?
Yung pong sistema nagbigay daan doon sa pagkakaroon ng mga political dynasty is exactly yung unitary system. Ito ho yung kasalukuyang sistema na nagbigay daan sa pagkakaroon ng political dynasty. So kung hindi natin babaguhin yan, edi magtutuloy-tuloy lang ho yan. Of course, dapat din natin i-recognize yung potential na baka nga pag nag-federal tayo, lalong ma-entrench at magkaroon ng sariling kaharian, kingdoms, yung mga political dynasties na lumabas dahil sa unitary system at lalong lumakas. Ang sa amin ho, ang tingin namin, dapat natin tingnan, kailan ba nagsimula yung mga political dynasties na yan? Sa amin, sa region namin, kaya namin tingnan Una, yung mga pinaboran ng mga Espanyol na pangontra sa amin. Yun ay binigyan ng kapangyarihan at lakas ng mga Espanyol at lumakas yung pamilya. Yun pong pinaboran ng mga Amerikano, yun pong pinaboran ng kasalukuyang gobyerno ng Pilipinas. Yun po sila dahil pag-eleksyon, pagtuta ka nung Manila, ibibigay sa yung control sa COMELEC, yung teacher, yung police, yung sundalo. So yung Diba, kailangan natin, of course, pag nag-shift tayo sa federal, kailangan merong check doon sa mga bagay na yon. Unang check dyan, syempre, hindi na pwedeng ibigay lahat ng Manila yon dahil nga pinaghiwalay natin yung powers sa listahan. So hindi na monopoly ng Manila yung pagbibigay ng powers. Ang pangalawang importante ay yung dapat meron talagang principled political parties sa baba na accountable siya, hindi doon sa Manila, kundi doon sa mga tao. Sa amin, wala hong nagtityaga na mag-build ng constituency sa amin, pumunta sa mga liblib na lugar, kausapin mga tao namin, ibigay ng solusyon yung problema. Kasi ang kailangan lang nila na skill, marunong kang sumipsip sa Manila. At ma-entrench ka na dynasty. So, hanggat hindi natin shift yung center kung saan manggagaling yung power at laging nasa Manila, hindi magtityaga yung mga tao namin na bumaba sa constituencies nila para humingi ng boto at magsilbi sa kanila.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much.
Alright, just a quick reminder for those who are going to give their comments, please briefly state your queries and or comments. So we have two guys from the back.
Magandang hapon po. Assalamualaikum sa mga kapatid natin ng mga Muslim. Ako po sa Relative Power from Mindanao People Peace Movement. Isa po ako ang Bangsamoro. Actually, nasagot-sagot po ninyo yung isa sa mga katanungan ko regarding sa elitista ng mga politika. Kaya lang, isa sa mga problema natin, yung paggawa ng constitution ay mga elitista politiko pa rin. Ibig sabihin, yung mga lumal natin ng mga kapatid isang congressman, kapatid natin ng moral na congressman, hindi naman sila mga professional masyado. Kundi nag-aaral naman sila, pero nandun pa rin sila sa section bayabas. Ibig sabihin, hindi po sila maggawa ng mas mabuting batas. Kaya lang, nais ko po malaman, dapat sa federal, dapat meron po tayong special na mga constitution. Di ba, dalawang constitution na mangyari? Yung federal na constitution o yung state constitution. Aside of that, dapat yung mga yung mga minority po natin na mga kakapatid, dapat meron sarili silang constitution. Para tinatawag natin special na sila sa mga kanilang gawain. Kasi kahit na meron po tinatawag natin federal, pero kung maghahari naman yung mga elitista, sana naman yung mga minorities. So sana sa paggawa ng mga constitution, nandun yung espesyalista, nandun yung special na constitution para sa mga kapatid natin ng Bangsamoro o yung mga kapatid natin ng mga lumat kasi sila yung biyahin. Yung pong nas ko lang iparating, kahit na tayo po ginagawa natin yan eh. Kahit sino mga Bangsamoro na tumatakbo congressman, hindi yan mananalo pag walang pera. Kahit sino mga matalino, mga lumat o mga moro, tatakbo ng mga senador, hindi pa rin na mananalo. Sino mananalo? Yung mga mayaman at seksyon bayabas pa rin ang mag-uupo na hindi naman makagawa ng mabuting buwan. Paulit-ulit na magagawa ng mga batas. Paulit-ulit para sa kanila. Pero sa anin yung mga so nais lang po natin kung mag-federal po tayo, sana iisipin po natin yung paggawa ng konstitusyon dalawa. Yung federal constitution o yung state constitution. At sana isipin natin kung anong konsepto ang dapat natin malaman. Kasi yung sa Pilipinas, ilang region na po yan. Ibig sabihin, mga director po, mga elitista. Wala kang makikita ng iba-ibang mga political. So sana isipin lang po natin yan. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you. The next.
Then we have one more. After you, sir, dito bigyan natin ng chance yung kabilang side, kabilaan.
Okay, hello. Konti lang ito. Klaruhin ko na lang.
Sadali po, please introduce yourself.
Kindly introduce yourself. And
Ako po si Dato' Roldan Babilon, yung salukuyan pong kalihim ng indigenous political structure ng Central Mindanao, isang arumana naman po. Klaruhin na lang nato nigsulti, binisaya na lang. O Tagalog ba? Pasensya na at hindi kami masyadong marunong mag-Tagalog. Gusto na mo nga kung na may pidira kay change man balhin man ning atong gobyerno dito sa federal tagaan na og isa ka estado, isa ka federal state ang mga lumad. Klaro na lang yun namo ning panawagan sa inyo. Kay total ang among katungod, the rights of the indigenous people is not based on the legal, but it is real. Iba yung real at legal rights. Kaya yung legal rights, gisulat pa. Katong real, wato gisulat, pero may tinuod. Salamat.
Okay. Thank you. Would anyone would like to respond?
Yes, Attorney Parcasio.
whether tama po yun, kahit na po tayo nag-iba ng sistema, ang tanong, hihinto na ba ang kahirapan sa buong bansa? Hindi po. Kung hindi natin babaguhin ang ating sarili. If the people across the country will not change themselves and still allow some of them to be bought during elections, wala pong pagbabago. Malaki po ang role nito ng mga eskwelahan na tuturuan ang mga mamamayan na mga bata pa na kung sila ay maging abogado, huwag silang maging sinungaling. Kung sila maging accountant, huwag nilang doktorin yung kanilang tax, income tax return. Kung sila ay maging engineer, huwag nilang kulangan yung semento na i-apply sa mga public highways, no? At kung sila ay doktor, ay gamutin naman nila ang mga walang pera. Tinuturo po ba ito sa ating mga paaralan? Mula ng bata pa hanggang maging isang matured na individual. Are our institutions, those who are tasked to mold the minds of our youth and our people, have they not taught our children that this world, this planet is just a fleeting, scene na hindi tayo, ang itong mundo na ito, hindi ito permanent. Merong ibang mundo na kung saan ay kung ano man yung kalagayan mo doon, ay magdepende kung anong klase ka dito sa mundo na ito. At saka, kaya nagkakaroon ng maraming durugista sapagkat pag alam ng durugista ay yung kaligayahan ay nasa katawan lang. Hindi nila na nakalimutan nila na ang tunay na kaligayahan ay nasa Diyos. Pero hindi po ito tinuturo because that is why if we have to change our constitution, we have to examine very closely the principle of separation of the church in the state. Does it correctly respond to the culture of the Filipino people?
Okay, thank you, sir. Now we go to the next.
Yes, those who want to raise a question from this side, then after
Dito,
here, this side.
Andy.
There
This
we
lady.
have, yes ma'am, please.
Yeah, please.
April de la Cruz from Centuries Democracy Political Institute. The theme of this pakighinabi is Mindanao in the search for federal alternatives. I totally appreciate that before we shift the discussion to a higher level, we must also try to level off the expectations of the participants, mainly the panelists. So I appreciate that there's a historical, cultural exchange on why we shift to federal. But still, I went here with the expectations on this theme, Mindanao in the search for federal alternatives. Now, I was also looking forward that the panelists will be able to give their recommendations, perhaps their thoughts on how do we make that huge tectonic government shift. So I was looking forward for a discussion on, it's not about why federal, because that has been answered after the elections. No? I think all of us here agree that we go federal, but as to how is what I'm looking for. So are we gonna shift to federal presidential or federal parliamentary form of government? Or are we gonna develop our own federal Filipino recipe? So that's what I'm looking for this pakighinabi. And then lastly, of course, I would like to know from the panelists if I would like to highlight what are the salient alternatives, or at the same time, what do we need to know before we go through this shift? What are as what Mr. Lorenzana said, the preconditions? Are we gonna shift immediately? As I've learned that there is, we're gonna come up with a constitutional reform, CONAS. Ayon. So what are the implications of this mode of reforming the Constitution? So those are my concerns. Thank you.
Ma'am, do you have a related query with
Mayang hapon sa tanan. Mrs. Flor Deloria, Ateneo Grade School, Matina Campus. Aralin Palipunan teacher. I am just challenged with the challenge of, sir, that yes, I believe that the academe has a very great role in changing our society. Yes, we did. There's a question that even when I was a student, my teachers taught me to be honest in the things we do. Our teachers in education told us that when you're an engineer, you have to teach your students honesty and have to build strong bridges and not to resolve into corruption. As an AP teacher, I always remind my students to love our country. Palagi kong binabalik-balik sa kanila, love your country, because no other people would love our country. The Koreans will not love our country. The Americans will not love our country. It is only us Filipinos who will fight and love our country. I always teach that, but sometimes I get frustrated because when the children go out from the school, they see our politicians on television. What kind of languages do they use? How do they manage their emotion? Parang hindi naman, parang nahihiya naman ako sa mga bata na magsasabi sa kanila, love your country, when our political leaders don't seem to show the love of the country. So it is indeed very true that the change should be coming from us, from each citizen of the country. So we just hope that it is not only the school who will teach our students, who will teach the young to love our country and to be honest. Lahat po tayo at sana ang maging modelo natin yung mga nasa itaas dahil sila po yung tinitingala ng aming mga estudyante. Salamat po.
Thank you, ma'am. So 2 points. Yes, sir. Attorney.
Okay. Quick reaction lang. Doon po sa kung papaano, yun po yung sinabi namin kanina, kung papaano, ano ba ang itsura, anong gagawin, ano ba ang isang Federal Republic ng Pilipinas. So, sinabi po namin na kung tingnan nyo ngayon, yung lahat ng batas sa buong Pilipinas ay ginagawa ng Congress, di ba? At saka ng Senado. Pag nagkaroon po ito ng federal form of government, meron tayong kongreso sa kada regional state. Yung kada regional state, yung kultura, Bisaya o magsalita sa kanilang natibo na native language para magkaintindihan. They are more closer to the people and they understand the multifarious basic demands or issues confronting their homeland. So, madali silang malapitan sapagkat ay ng aeroplano, no? So, yung institusyon na yan ay tinatawag na Regional State Assembly. Sila yung kongreso ng mga tao sa each regional state. Sila yung gagawa ng batas. Kaya, dapat ibibigay sa kanila ang kapangyarihan na gagawa ng batas tungkol sa agrikultura, tungkol sa forestry, fisheries, ancestral land, mining, na napakainit ngayon, health, at iba pang mga bagay na concerning basic services. Hindi na natin ito pananatilihin sa national government na napakawalayo, no? Dito na lang sa atin. So, yun po ang hitsura ng federal form of government na minumungkahi ng KPP. At saka, yung tungkol po sa Bangsamoro, ay dapat sila ay magkaroon sila ng isang autonomiya sang-ayon sa sinasabi ni Attorney Nagib, sinarimbo kanina, na base sa kanilang mga pinirmahan sa pamahalaan. Because to the pag sinabi mo na oo yan, hindi, tingnan natin. No? Pag sinabing hindi. Pag pinirmahan mo, sagrado na yon, kailang tutuparin mo. So lahat ng pinirmahan ay pag-isa-isahin at yun na ang magiging itsura ng kanilang autonomiya sa loob ng Mindanao. Ano ba yung sinatawag na meron po kami mungkahi, pwede pong yung sinasabi ni Presidente na Parliament, whether it's Parliament or whatever, it should be with a strong President. So minamungkahi po namin na pag tayo ay boboto ng Presidente, a vote for the President is also a vote for the Vice President, para hindi magkaroon ng konflikto yung President at saka Vice President. At in a presidential form of government, yung 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 6 na estado na sinasabi namin, dapat doon kukunin yung mga senador, no? So let's say, isang senador sa 5 senador galing sa Mindanao, 5 sa Visayas, 5 sa Metro Manila, 5 sa Northern Luzon at Southern Luzon. So 5 times 6, that's 30. No, I think that's fairly reasonable number of senators. Hindi tulad ngayon na lahat ng senador nanggagaling sa isang lugar. 30 na lang ngayon, which an exception to the historical past regarding Philippine politics na yung Senate President, yung Speaker at yung Presidente galing sa Mindanao. That's exceptional. But in order to equitably distribute political powers to all the peoples in the Philippines, there should be equal representation in all regional states at iba pa. Meron din pong mungkahi. Usuriin natin yung pangalan ng ating bansa. Dapat ba tayo ay tawagin pa ring Philippines? Hindi ba ang Philippines ay galing sa pangalang King Philip na siyang itong colonizer ng Pilipinas, na siya ang dahilan na daming mga taong Pilipino na napatay, na siya ang dahilan na lahat ng problema ng ating bansa ngayon. Isa sa mga malaking dahilan. Now, ipagmamalaki ba natin na tayo ay sakop ni King Philip nung una? Hindi ba maaring babaguhin yung ating pangalan? So may mga suggestions, no? Una, Maharlika, o di kaya Luz Biminda, o di kaya Perlas ng Silangan, o di kaya Rizal, o di kaya Lapu-Lapu, or Pilipinas, no? To mitigate, no? Instead of Philippines, just to mitigate the effect of vestiges of colonialism on our name. Pwede na siguro ang Pilipinas, no? So, at iba pa. Now, pwede din pong ma-insure yung pag-insure na walang political warlords or dynasties. Minamukhay pa namin na kailangan yung federal states hindi maliit. Kasi kung maliit, for example, Region 11, isang federal state, madaling influensyahan yan ng dynasty. Pero kung buong Mindanao, mahirap yon, no? Kasi you have to contend with different peoples across Mindanao. You have to contend with 24 million people or across Visayas or etc. So, kaya nga po, minamungkahin namin, kailangan yung isang federal state, malaki, hindi maliit. Kung malaki, malakas, mayaman pa.
Sir, yes, Professor Go.
About the grade school teacher, of course, we can always teach our students, no? But we're just one of the different agents of socialization. They encounter other people outside. So regardless of how passionate we are in what we teach, to love our country, we can only do so much. Because when they go outside of our classroom, they will be exposed to their community, and that would be a different world for them. About federalism, I don't think we need to assume at this point that we all want a federal system. We still need to ask why. And that's why we heard the reasons. Because the people from Mindanao, people from Visayas may also have their reasons. And we have to know that. Because in order for us to achieve one goal, we know where all Filipinos are coming from. Kasi kung isang rason lang ang pagbabatayan natin, mahihirapan tayong pag-isahin yung bansa. Okay? So, yun lang yung punto doon. So, it's not a waste of time to ask the question of why. Of course, we are looking for alternatives, but in order for us to determine which are the alternatives for the current system, we must be able to identify what is lacking in the current system, what do we want to address, and how we will be addressing them. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other
Okay,
questions?
I've seen, okay, dito may isa sa right side. Yes. Yes, sir.
Ako po si Max Labandero, lupong taga-pamayapa in Barangay 9-E. Ang tanong ko lang po, sir, ganito, if God's allowed us na ma-promote itong federalismo, ang tanong ko lang po, paano yung judiciary system natin? Kasi hindi natin pagkaila yung mga Moro, meron silang Sharia law. So ang tanong ko lang, paano ang federalismo, what we call judiciary system natin? Yun lang po.
yung mungkahi po namin, yung Korte Suprema at saka yung ang national government, sila rin ang magmimintinan ng Korte Suprema o Supreme Court at saka yung Court of Appeals. No? At saka meron yung tinatawag na Tribunal of Intergovernmental Relations na minamungkahi namin. Ibig sabihin, pag may batas na gagawin ng isang regional state, salungat sa batas na ginawa ng National Parliament, kung hindi yon ma-settle sa isang governmental mechanism called intergovernmental relations. So, una mayroong conflict. Pag hindi, isasampa na sa Tribunal of Intergovernmental Relations. No? Ngayon, yung at saka yung sa dito naman sa regional state ay magkaroon ng pagbabago sapagkat meron tinatawag na State Court of Appeals, no? At saka below that, yung regional trial courts, metropolitan trial courts, city circuit trial courts, municipal circuit trial courts, at yung Sharia district courts, pati yung Sharia circuit trial courts, pati na rin tribal courts. So, pinamungkahin namin na dapat meron ding tribal courts na siyang magkaroon ng jurisdiction tungkol sa mga problema ng ating mga non-Islamized na katutubo.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Ang share ko lang ay currently meron na tayo yung Sharia courts na may limited jurisdiction para doon sa person and family relations ng mga Muslims. And it's not confined sa ARMM. It also operates outside of the region. Ang proposal doon kung tingnan mo yung Comprehensive Agreement on the Bangsamoro, pati yung translation niya sa BBL, ang sistema ay meron kang transition period doon sa Sharia na practitioners. Kasi merong recognition na merong mga tao sa MILF na nagpapatakbo ng Sharia nila. At may mga train sila na mga tao. Samantalang meron ka namang tinrain ng gobyerno na binigyan ng 45 days na training, pinag-exam, at binigyan ng Supreme Court ng authority na mag-practice doon sa mga Sharia na sanctioned by government. So, dalawang sistema ng Sharia. Ang position ng BBL ay magkaroon ng transition na gradually lumabas yung Sharia court ng MILF at maging regular siya. So ipag-merge natin yung merong academy na ita-design na mag-aral pareho dun sa substance at saka dun sa procedure. Kasi malakas yung gobyerno dun sa procedure, mahina siya dun sa substance dahil 45 days ka lang nag-aral, di mo naman inintindi yung buod ng Sharia law. So kailangan nating ipag-merge yun. Yung issue ng jurisdiction ay mahigpit yung Constitution ng Pilipinas at mahirap siya sa ngayon, pati nga yung pag-appoint lang ng representation sa JBC, dadaan pa sa kanila yan. Yung issue ng jurisdiction, sila lang pwede magsabi kung sino magbibigay ng jurisdiction. So ginawa sa BBL ay merong proseso na mag-evolve yung parliamentary, yung Bangsamoro Parliament, nung jurisdiction para doon sa Sharia. Ang iniisip natin, pag nag-shift at inamend yung Constitution, tatiming siya na merong lugar, merong pagluluwag sa taas para mabigyan ng expression yung essential laws pati practices ng mga indigenous na mga tao, kasama na ho yung mga Muslim. So hindi bibiglain yung implementation, pero merong recognition na dapat nga tingnan na natin yung kabuluhan ng mga indigenous na system ng batas. At importante ho yun dahil hanggat hindi natin ginagawa yun, patuloy na magkakaroon ng underground na justice system sa atin na hindi doon sa recognized ng gobyerno. So yung mga agrabyado, pag hindi favorable sa yung gobyerno, lilipat ka doon sa underground na sistema. So nagiging parte ng problema ho natin doon sa kawalan ng hustisya sa mga lugar ho natin.
Okay, thank you.
We have one from this side and then one more here. Okay? Si Sir with the white polo, siya muna nauna.
Ako po si Chito Gavino, matagal ng federalist. Bata pa ako noon, gwapo pa ako noon. Nag-a-advocate na kami ng federalism noon pa. Ngayon, meron tayong isang professor galing sa UP at ang gusto ko lang po matanong kay Professor Go, kayo po ba ay sang-ayon o hindi sa plano ni Presidente mag-shift as early as possible sa federal system?
Mahirap pong sagutin yung tanong ninyo. Una, papaano pong forma ng federalismo yung gusto nating kuhanin at ipatupad? Kasi nakadepende po dyan yung magiging sagot ko. Anong mga pangyarihan po yung isi-share? Kasi may suggestion po dito si Sir, may suggestion din si Nene Pimentel, may suggestion din si Jose Abueva. So marami pong tao, iba-ibang suggestion. So pag sinabi po nating federalismo, hindi naman po iisang uri yan. No?
Alam namin yon. Pero kayo, pinag-aralan nyo naman siguro na yan, no? Sang-ayon ba kayong ilipat ang bansa sa federalismo o hindi kayo sang-ayon o hindi nyo pa alam? Kasi po, sa Mindanao, klarong-klaro na yan sa Mindanao, nalilipat kami sa federal system. Kung ang mga taga-Manila at ang mga ang ibang Luzon ay mag-aalang-alangan pa dyan sa bagay na yan, bahala na kayo.
Hindi naman po siguro ito issue ng kung saan ako galing o nasa saan man ako ngayon. Ito po ay issue na para rin po sa buong bansa. Ano po, ang gusto naman po natin dito ay ikabubuti ng lahat. Hindi po ikabubuti lang ng mga nasa isang lugar sa Pilipinas. Ang posisyon po natin ay nakadepende po nga sa kung papaano didesenyohin ang federalismo. Hindi po ba? At maaaring sangayunan natin yung posisyon na binibigay ni Sir Bong at yung sa iba naman po ay hindi natin sangayunan. Pero yun nga po, kailangan pa ng masusing pag-aaral. Dahil bagamat mahaba na yung diskusyon tungkol sa federalismo sa buong bansa, no? Ang tanong pa rin dyan, papaano mo ibibigay ang mga kapangyarihan? Okay? Gaano kalaking kapangyarihan ba ang ibibigay ninyo? At kung hanggat hindi po malinaw, mahirapan po tayong sabihin na okay iyan, hindi okay iyan. Yun lamang po ang sa akin.
Kaya nga po, sa amin matagal na yan. Yung mga wise na yan, matagal na yan, pinag-usapan namin yan nung araw pa eh. Naging klaro na sa mga taga Mindanao at na hindi nawala na yung wise ngayon. Ang ano ngayon, paano nga, dapat ang pinag-uusapan na natin, yung ano bang ilalagay natin sa konstitusyon nato, lalo na yung protection of the ancestral domain. Mga bagay na yan. Yan ang saan ang ating pinag-uusapan. Kasi kung pag-uusapan pa natin ngayon yung mabuti ba tayo mag-shift sa federal system o hindi, ano bang rason dyan? Tapos na yan eh. Binoto na natin si Presidente Duterte sa at sabi niya, mag-shift tayo sa federal system. So tapos na yung diskusyon ng why na yan. At ang tanong ngayon is, how? Ano ba ang ilalagay natin sa ating konstitusyon na para gumanda ng husto? Yan ang dapat usapan natin ng husto.
Okay. Yes, that is noted. But perhaps we can have another occasion that will focus solely on the question of the specifics, no?
Yes.
Sa ngayon, the discussion has been very rich. And there are concrete steps that are offered. There are answers to the questions of why, and we are happy that it is coming out. Yes, I think Mr. Lorenzana raised his hand a while ago. Sir, would you like to say something quickly? Then we acknowledge the question of the student here.
Just quickly,
Yes.
because that is a very important question, because I've been sitting down here in the hope that we can discuss federalism. And since you are the headman here who presented, then he's just simply asking, and I want to wait also. If you're not for federalism or want what do you want? Yun lang.
I think
So we can debate because You're the guy who's on there, eh. Diba?
I think
And then importante yung sabi ni Juan, because all of us are talking about federalism, and you are urong-sulong ka. Now, what you want only is that, what do you want? Period.
Professor Go has answered the question. Can we, yes, let us acknowledge the student first.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
So, good afternoon, everyone. I am Crisame Pinzon, International Studies. I'm from Samahan Central Board, the Student Council of Ateneo, and Piglasapan Political Party. So, just to stimulate also the discussion as to how are we going to do the federal type or the federal system of government. Na-raise kasi kanina yung question on political dynasty, and one of the things that was suggested was to strengthen the political parties. In some countries in Europe and even in other universities such as Xavier University, they are funding the political parties. The state gives subsidy to political parties in order for the political parties to engage in political education, political organization, and etc. However, the idea is new to us because here in Ateneo, we're not used to the idea of the state funding the political parties, because this could also be used for the political party to do things that aren't really for the society, but just to advance the political propaganda of the party. Do you think that in a political or in a federal type of government, will it be effective to have a state subsidy to the political parties, or what are its implications?
Yeah, good. Can I answer that? That's a very good question, because basically that is the position of the CDP and in fact the PDP Laban also. Number one is we first shift to parliamentary, okay? Now, whether we are going to be parliamentary or federal parliamentary, the key here is a real political party, not the kind of political party we have here. Which means, and let me point out here what is a real political party. Number one is it has to be, as I've said, ideologically anchored, so you can differentiate between political parties and therefore present it to the people. No? Second is we have a dues-paying membership, so the members have a stake. The third is, and we picked this up from Germany, the parties in Germany, is that a member of a political party who jumps from one party to the other after election loses his membership in the political party and loses his elected position. Di ba mas maganda yan? Now, we have in fact a Political Party Reform Act which we introduced during the time of Pinoy, and even before that, during the time of FDR, where we have a subsidy. In Germany, for example, there is a party list, hindi yung separate party list kagaya sa atin. Yung party list is within the political party. Kaya masking pobre ka, you can be part of the party lists, and then this is subsidized by government. The subsidy of government depend on what you call proportional representation. If in the election, you have, let's say, 1 million votes, okay? Ang kalaban mo, 500,000 votes. Government will dictate an amount, will say, okay, for the 100 million votes mo, you get 100 pesos, okay? Or let me say, 1,000 pesos. So we have 100 million, which you can use for education for your party. Not only that, you are not going to have individuals only going to run. In the party list, you vote for the party. So, ano yung maboboto mo sa party? If you have, let's say, 60%, that is also 60% what you get from your party lists. Okay? Now, the important thing is whether the guys who are going to run for position are rich or poor, it is incumbent upon government to subsidize. That way, hindi na yung patron ang bibigay ng pera. Na, hindi na yung si Mr. Kuwangko, hindi na yung si Mr. Villar, kundi ang gobyerno mismo will subsidize. This is very, very successful in Germany, and it is very successful in England. It is very successful in all of the other federal parliamentary. That's why this is what we want installed here. That's why, as I've said, federal parliamentary is a party government, where the head is the head of state and gusto natin presidente, so head of government and head of state. The important thing is whether whatever kind of parliamentary government you have to have the political party reform, and it's been there in the Congress. Sinira yan ni Pinoy. Because Pinoy thought that Liberal Party will win. And what happened? He was wiped out. And not only that, his Liberal Party has now jumped to PDP. You see the point? This is the anomaly of political party in the Philippines. We have to change that.
Well, given the questions and ideas raised in the recent questioners, I think I would like to suggest that since in Mindanao we are already a step further, we have already asked the question why, and the process that we are now doing is asking the question how and what. And I think the invitation is maybe for the Ateneo as an institution, for those who are for federalism, to start conducting conversation and come up with more specific suggestions. Ano ba ang gusto nyong ilalaman ng federal constitution ng bansa? So, your participation starts now. Hindi lang doon sa kung meron ng federal system of government, that's the only time that you will participate. So, maybe start the participation now. I would like to invite the student council and maybe the organization of the faculty to really start discussing ano bang naiisip nyo na magandang ilalaman ng ating federal constitution.
Thank you. The suggestion is well noted. Yes?
Ito po yung mga models na pinopropose ng KPP. Una, yung presidential bicameral, na kung saan ang president and vice president will be voted directly by the people through block voting. So a vote for the president is also a vote for the vice president and vice versa. Ang kanyang legislative body po ay merong lower house whose members will be elected by district, yung tulad ngayon. And an upper house, which is equivalent to the Senate, where the senators will be elected per region at 5 senators each. Yung isa pong model o modelo na tinatalakay ay yung parliamentary but with strong president. No? Tulad ng presidential, bicameral, ang presidente at vice president, they will also be elected at large through block voting. Ngunit yung federal parliament, there will be two kinds of members. Una, yung elected district representative. So kung yung individual, maaari siyang tumakbo bilang district representative. No? Pangalawang klase na membro ng parliament, yung party district representative, na kung saan ang partido ay siyang bobotohan, no? Hindi yung tao. So sa isang distrito, dalawang klaseng parliamentarian o congressman o whatever name you want to call him or her, dalawang klase. Now, ang concern dito ay dadami yung members ng House of Representatives o Parliament, no? Anyway, wala na tayong Senado dito, no? Ngunit, dito sa modelo na ito, ngunit, para hindi naman masyadong marami, kailangan yung isang legislative district ay dapat mas malaki yung kanyang population kaysa district ngayon. No? So, i-increase yung population ng district upang magkaroon ng hindi mahigit na 360 members ang national parliament. At yung parliament ay magkakaroon ng speaker or chief minister na kung saan ang kanyang ang kanyang role or power or authority ay tulad ng Speaker or Senate President.
Okay.
At saka, one last thing, dahil sa iba't iba po ang kultura sa buong Pilipinas at iba-iba yung mga itong sitwasyon ng kada regional state, ay minamungkahi po namin na magkaroon ng isang asymmetric federal government or asymmetric federalism na kung saan maaring yung ibang states ay parehos yung kanilang kapangyarihan o katangian, may ibang state na dahil sa sitwasyon ay meron silang ibang klaseng authority powers, no, or powers. Tulad ng nangyayari sa Spain, no, at sa ibang mga bansa at sa Canada, no. So, maaring ang Mindanao ay iba ang kanyang hitsura, iba yung kanyang power dahil sa unique ang ating sitwasyon dito. Meron tayong Islamized indigenous peoples, meron tayong Christianized indigenous peoples, no? Na sinasabing yung Moro at saka yung Katutubo. Yung dalawa Katutubo yun, no? Iba yung situation natin. At saka matindi yung ating issue ng ancestral domain, ancestral land. Ganon din sa Northern Luzon, sa Cordillera, no? So asymmetric, hanapin nyo sa ano ba yung asymmetric, sapagkat ang unang nag-introduce yan dito ay ang MILF, no? Yung asymmetric concept of a Bangsamoro autonomous government, no? So yun pong ibig sabihin, hinanap namin, sinuri namin, ano bang ibig sabihin yan? Ibig sabihin yan, may mga estado sa loob ng federal states na iba yung kanyang katangian.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Yes, I think we can accommodate Dr. Villa one more question.
One more question, perhaps from this side of the room. Okay, sir. One last. Sorry. Yeah, kanina. Sorry, sir. Maybe we still have some more time.
Good afternoon, and I am Rodolfo Bagao, a Kagawad from one of the barangays here in Davao City. And also, I am also an advocate of federalism, of which I got interested in attending this forum. I congratulate the MNLF, the MILF, and the LOMADS for having a concise and concrete idea already of how to do with their particular areas of responsibilities, that they know what they're asking for and they know what they're. But I also commiserate to those people who doesn't know about federalism at all, who just maybe they raise their hands and listen, but they don't have any idea of what it is. So, being an advocate, simple man lang ang understanding natin dito. Firstly, itawag natin is sharing of resources and sharing of power. All the problems that confronts or make arise, it can be resolved if we have properly distributed these powers and also with the resources. Why am I interested in a shift from unitary government to federalism? Is because we have some advantage and we have also some disadvantages as far as these systems are concerned. We have observed that unitary form of government has several disadvantages, such as the main source of power comes from the president itself, and they can dictate the tempo of development in any other places, especially in the Philippines. For example, the development in our brother Muslims there are very much slower than the development which is in the national government. So here in Davao City, for example, we had the idea of having a train transportation in Mindanao, and it was approved by NEDA for 2 years ago, but yet no funding has been given, even it has been approved by the planning body. So, we talk about education. so many people are complaining. Why? That we don't have the grasp of the proper education of our children. But to my experience, when I was small, I went to school in a barrio. Our books were printed by the government that said Pipi and Pilar. And they teach apple, they teach train, they teach airplanes and movies. And they teach you how to sing planting rice. Planting rice is never fun. Cannot sit, cannot stand. How would you encourage the farmers from doing their job as a farmer when they're being taught that it is never fun to be a farmer? And they teach about apple, English, which we don't have in the barrios. We have the avocados, star apples, and so on. So people seek to go to the city and seek for these things that they have not found in their barrio. That's why we have the congestion in the city. We don't have farmers anymore because they really would want to be in the city, because to see the movies, to see all the things that has been published and has been taught by the Americans. Then here comes our officials. They said, magkaroon tayo ng land reform. So, all the small landowners, 30 hectares and a little more, are forced to distribute their land to their farmers.
Okay, thanks.
So,
briefly.
Yes, briefly, meaning if we only depend all the decisions coming from one source of government, especially in Manila, for example, then we from the provinces will not benefit or will not advance ourselves and economically, and development is very much slow. So that's the reason why I really would wish that the rest, even from Mindanao and even from the Visayas, that they will really adhere and follow and push through with the idea of federalism so that there will be equal distribution of wealth, resources, and development. Thank you.
Okay, ma'am.
Questions? Yes, we have to wind up. And the desire to share really is an indicator, Attorney Cabarde, that perhaps we need another occasion to have more sharing like this, no? So thank you, Dr. Villa, for assisting me in facilitating this forum. Okay? Yes, we have to end up somewhere. So thank you to our panel. But before we end up, just a very brief summary of what transpired. We came here for a gathering to talk about the Mindanao search for federal alternatives. Perhaps to other people, this is a theme that was already construed as signaling that we are definite, we go federal, and then how are we going to proceed? Perhaps to some people who came over, this is an occasion where collectively and loudly we think whether we go federal, if ever, what are the possibilities? And if we do not, then what are the possibilities? From the standpoint of the organizers, and that is the UCEAC and the Center for Politics and International Affairs of the university, we created this forum so we can bring the major stakeholders to put their case and then discuss it collectively with the rest of people so that those who are not yet in the know may know, and those who are definite in their thoughts could already take ideas on how we are going to proceed with this. So specifically, the lead discussant have raised the question on the importance of the need. Because if this is going to be a major political reform, then what need does it answer? Okay? And then and I appreciate the sharing of the different panel because I think for Mindanao, there were very key issues that were raised. On the level of the substantive need, no? If we decide to go into a political reform, we should never forget the issue of historical injustice, transitional justice, the context of a very diverse culture, and the context of historical claims. Second, we have to revisit the legal impediments to whatever possibilities that we would like to entertain. And then you raise also other issues such as the issue of governance, citizenship formation, and Attorney Jimenez was very emphatic in saying that the gender dimension into the discourse of political reform has to be configured such that we broaden the issue or the construction of difference, not only in terms of ethnic differences, economic differences, ideological differences, but also gender differences. The bottom line, and this is what I appreciate, especially from this group here, and was cemented by the sharing from this group, it appears like we have differences, but if we go through the meat of the discussion, we are indeed one people, one Mindanao, who understand each other and who knows where we came from, and that we are willing to hear out things, we are willing to resolve things in our hands. That's why I think the lawyer from the MILF said, we need to reclaim the space where we can resolve and negotiate our causes. And I think our friend from Lake Cebu, sir, am I right? From Pulumulok is saying, include us. That is also the theme of the speech of Timuay here. Isama natin sa diskurso ang mga lumad, even kahit kasama, no? Kung hindi pa kayang iangat ang participation. And it looks like we appreciate that. And also there were very strong feelings from the group na we are definite, na gusto na talaga namin mag-federal. That's typically Mindanao sentiment. Bakit ang tagal-tagal yung mag-decide? Then that means we have to create a space, a venue where for people who already have definite minds about it, then let's talk about the way of proceeding, the specifics. And apparently, the MNLF is very prepared for this discourse, no? Amazingly. Kaya tama nga ang sinasabi, hindi naman totoong revolusyonaryo, talaga namang revolusyonaryo. And we are ready to grasp the political opportunities the new administration offer. So, in the name of the organizing body, we thank you, my dear members of the panel, for very honest and very discursive disposition in sharing your thoughts and feelings. Most of all, thank you, Professor Go. Thank you for entering the domain of Mindanao. This is how we proceed here. I hope you take us how we are, and I hope that you will become part of the journey that we have in seeking our place here in this country we call Philippines, no? So, thank Pilipinas. So, thank you so much. And now, yes, Dr. Villa, sandali, hindi pa po tayo tapos.
Please don't leave yet. Snacks will be served outside later. But the requirement is you have to stay muna for a while. Now, let me recognize, kasi a while ago, I failed to recognize other groups. So, from Sangguniang Panglungsod, Councilor Militar Staff, nandito, staff ni Councilor Militar. And then we have from Global Impact, Philippines Foundation, Incorporated. Centrist Democratic Political Institute, recognized a while ago. Then we have from the community of NGOs, Kilos Federal sa Pagbabago. A round of applause, please. So Optimist. And from the community, we have Barangay Turil proper. Please be recognized, Mahayag, Bunawan, Akasya, Sa, Barangay 28C. Thank you for coming, Barangay Mando, Barangay Kisupaan, North Cotabato, Barangay Kalinan, Barangay 29C, and Barangay Lapu-Lapu. Thank you for coming, schools from UIC and Assumption College of Davao, of course, Ateneo de Davao University. And lastly, of course, hindi pa tayo tapos, no? Stay muna for a while.
May we request that you please settle first?
Settle first. So, I'd just like to paano ba?
The closing remarks.
For the all good stuff has its beginning and its ending, no? So now, to give his closing remarks, may I call on Attorney Romeo Cabardes Jr. from the UCEAC. Senyor.
Okay. Wow. May we request, excuse me, focus. May we request everybody to take their seats first because we have to formally close the program as we have formally opened it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chan. It's usually very difficult to close a forum because at this point, everybody's hungry and everybody wants to go home na. But lend me your ears for a few more minutes. It's with much appreciation that we close these conversations on federalism in Mindanao. I appreciate the gathering, the coming together, especially bringing in the wisdom of the past and the idealism of the present. There's so much to learn from what our brothers and sisters have already discussed from as early as 70s and now very eager to start the ball rolling and talk about what should we do and how do we move forward. But it's also with much appreciation that today's generation still hunger and thirst for understanding why is there a need for the shift. And our coming together makes it a perfect venue for these to be called a pakighinabi. Indeed, I appreciate that no blood was drawn from this afternoon's discussion, that indeed it was an exchange of opinions, thoughts, our positions, and our ideas on how this can move forward for the good of the Philippines. So in behalf of the University Community Engagement and Advocacy Council, we would like to gratefully acknowledge the efforts of the Center for Politics and International Affairs. For everybody's information, this is a very new institute in the university, and this one is among the first few engagements that they have been doing. And mukhang mabigat din ang unang pagsubok sa kanilang public advocacy engagement. Through the leadership of Mr. Neil Ryan Pancho, thank you very much to CPIA. Our appreciation also goes to Mr. John Robert Go, who flew all the way from Manila just to be with us. Sir, please do not ever think that we offered you to a lion's den. But this is in the spirit of transparency, honesty, and discourse, an open exchange of our ideas and positions on federalism. Thank you very much. I know you woke up too early this morning just to be with us. And of course, to our panelists, Timoy, for always being with us, bringing the voice of the IP, Attorney Sinarimbo, Attorney Parcasio for our Bangsamoro brothers and sisters, Attorney Sedge for the women's voice, Sir Ledesma and Sir Lorenzana for the ongoing efforts since the early part and bringing in your wisdom on what kind of federal government the Philippines needs, especially with the current administration. Daghang salamat sa inyo. And of course, to our moderator, Dr. Sobrevega, Lordesita Sobrevega Chan, for facilitating it well. We thought of you, ma'am, because majority of our panelists are men, and only a woman like you can tame the gentleman. So maraming salamat, especially to our guests, to the students, to our visitors. Siguro ang conclusion ko lang ngayon, ang federalism, gaya ng Facebook status, it's so complicated.
Pero buti na lang may pakihinabi gaya nito, gaya ng Facebook, parang transparent din, may Facebook Live na. So lahat nakikita, lahat naririnig. And we will take on the challenge that you raised. The university will continue to offer platforms, avenues, where conversations like this can continue, because as a university, it's our mandate to continue looking for the truth, search for the truth, both in its theoretical and practical application. So with that, daghang salamat sa inyong pagtambong, padayon para sa federalismo sa Mindanao.
With that, thank you for coming and have a good day.